Beneath the sands of time, across the cradle of civilization, lie riddles that no empire, prophet or scholar has ever fully unravelled. In the ancient heartlands of the Middle East, where the first cities rose, where gods once walked alongside kings, and where the boundaries between myth and history dissolve, there are mysteries carved in stone, buried in desert silence, and whispered through forgotten scripts. How did the megalithic stones of Baalbek come to rest with such impossible precision? Why do ancient Sumerian tablets speak of rulers who reigned for tens of thousands of years? And what secrets might still slumber beneath the ruins of Babylon or in the shadow of Mount Ararat? These are not just relics of the past, they are fragments of a story we still don't understand. Stories of vanished knowledge, cryptic codes, and civilizations that may have been far more advanced than we dare admit. So sit back, relax, and let's dive deep into the lost, the hidden, and the unexplained. These are the ancient Middle Eastern mysteries that refuse to be forgotten. Imagine the sun rising over the dusty plains of ancient Mesopotamia. The Euphrates River winds through the parched earth, bringing life to the cradle of civilization. In the distance, past the baked mud brick walls of a once glorious city, something impossible gleams in the early light. A rising terrace of green cascading with vines and blooming with colours not often seen in the harsh desert. Palm trees sway gently above a series of stone platforms, their roots held not by soil, but by slabs of carved rock. Water flows upward against gravity's will, nourishing a lush, tiered paradise suspended in the sky. These were the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, or so the legend goes. They were described as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A man-made mountain of greenery rising high above the flat landscape designed, so some sources say, by King Nebuchadnezzar thus to soothe his homesick wife, who longed for the verdant hills of her native Media. According to ancient Greek writers like Strauss and Foe of Byzantium, the gardens defied nature, not only in beauty but in engineering. A multi-level marvel supported by vaults, stone columns, and a complex irrigation system that drew water up from the river below, and yet no one has ever found them. There is no definitive archaeological evidence, no inscriptions bearing their name, not even in the detailed chronicles of Babylon left behind by the very king who supposedly built them. How could something so grand, so celebrated, simply vanish without a trace? Some scholars argue that the Hanging Gardens may never have been in Babylon at all. Ancient texts, especially those of the Greek historian Strabo and the Roman writer Quintus Curtius Rufus, were written centuries after the gardens were supposedly constructed, and none were eyewitness accounts. Their descriptions may have been based on hearsay, idealized memory, or confusion with other places, entirely. One alternative theory places the gardens not in Babylon but in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, hundreds of miles to the north. There, King Sennacherib, who ruled in the 7th century BC, boasted of creating lush gardens and an advanced aqueduct system that watered the royal grounds. His inscriptions mention a wonder for all people with water raised by means of an invention he claimed to have devised himself. Archaeological excavations at Nineveh have indeed uncovered vast canals, terrace structures, and evidence of advanced hydraulics. Could it be that ancient chroniclers simply misattributed the location? That the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were in fact the gardens of Assyria? But if so, why the myth of Nebuchadnezzar? Why the association with Babylon, a city whose ziggurats and temples once rivaled the scale of pyramids? Could it be that the memory of multiple grand gardens across Mesopotamia blurred into a single legendary marvel? A fusion of fact and imagination retold by travellers and historians whose knowledge came not from first-hand sight, but from the stories whispered in caravanseras and royal courts. Then again, others wonder if the gardens did exist in Babylon, but were simply lost beneath layers of sediment and time. The Euphrates River has shifted its course dramatically over the centuries. Much of ancient Babylon remains buried or eroded, its ruins scattered and incomplete. Could the gardens lie beneath unexcavated earth, hidden beneath the modern landscape of Iraq? Or perhaps the gardens were never a fixed place at all, but a poetic metaphor, an expression of human longing for paradise. Crafted into stone and vine, a vision of order and beauty in a world so often ruled by chaos and dust. What adds to the puzzle is that Babylon itself was very real. It was one of the most powerful cities of the ancient world, known for its towering ziggurat, possibly the inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel and for the Ishtar Gate, a brilliant blue structure decorated with lions and dragons, unearthed and now displayed in Berlin. If such wonders endured, why would the Hanging Gardens leave no trace? Some fringe theories even suggest that the gardens were deliberately hidden, that they held spiritual or symbolic meaning that made them too sacred or too dangerous to preserve in the historical record. Others speculate about a lost form of technology, an early mastery of environmental engineering that allowed water to be pumped upward without machines we would recognise. These ideas remain unproven, but the absence of evidence has never silenced curiosity. If anything, it fuels it. As we move deeper into the heart of ancient mysteries, the journey leads us westward into the rugged hills of the Bekaa Valley in what is now modern-day Lebanon. Here, beneath a vast expanse of sky and framed by crumbling Roman ruins, lies a puzzle of stones so immense, so precise that its very existence challenges our understanding of ancient engineering. Baalbek. To the casual visitor, the site appears as another grand ruin from the classical world. Towering Corinthian columns, fractured archways and weathered carvings left behind by the Roman Empire. But nestled beneath this familiar grandeur is something far older, far heavier, and far more enigmatic. At the base of the Temple of Jupiter, long believed to be among the largest temples ever built by Rome, there lies a foundation made not of bricks or modest blocks, but of stones that dwarf everything above them. These are the megaliths of Baalbek, and they are among the largest stones ever quarried and moved by human hands. Today, the Hanging Gardens remain suspended not in air, but in mystery. They stand at the border between myth and memory, between what we know and what we only think we once knew. Could they still be buried beneath the soil of Iraq? Were they ever real at all? Or are they something more elusive, an echo of a longing to control nature, to bring life to the lifeless and to prove that beauty, even in the harshest places, can be made to rise? The answers remain out of reach, but the questions endure, and so we continue to look. One stone, known as the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, lies abandoned in a nearby quarry. It is over 70 foot long, weighs more than 1,000 tons, and was never moved into place, but others, 3 in particular, were. They sit embedded in the platform of the temple's base, fitted together with remarkable precision. Each weighing around 800 tons, these stones form what is called the trilithon, a term that refers to the 3 massive blocks aligned seamlessly at a height of roughly 20 posostef above the ground. How were they transported from the quarry to the site? How were they lifted and placed with such flawless alignment using only the tools available over 2,000 years ago? Mainstream archaeologists suggest that the stones were moved using an elaborate combination of sledges, wooden rollers, ropes, and human labour. The Romans, after all, were master engineers. They built aqueducts, amphitheatres, and roads that still endure today. But while this explanation may satisfy on paper, standing before the trilithon tells a different story. The scale is difficult to comprehend. Even with modern cranes, replicating such a feat would be logistically daunting. The roads between the quarry and the temple site are uneven and steep. The sheer friction and weight involved seem insurmountable with the proposed methods. No inscriptions explain the technique. No records from the Roman period speak of the undertaking in detail. And then comes the deeper question: why? Why build a foundation using stones of such impossible size when smaller, more manageable blocks would have sufficed? Was it a show of power, a symbolic gesture? Or could it be that the platform itself predates the Roman temple, that the Romans built atop something far older, inheriting a foundation whose origin was already lost to time? Some scholars believe that Baalbek was a sacred site long before the Romans arrived, perhaps as far back as the Phoenicians or even earlier. Ancient myths speak of Baalbek as the city of Baal, a storm god worshipped throughout the Levant. Others refer to it as Heliopolis, the city of the sun. Could the megaliths belong to this deeper, more mysterious past? Fringe theories push further still. Some suggest that the stones are remnants of a lost advanced civilization, one with forgotten technologies and capabilities. Others propose more exotic ideas that Baalbek was a landing platform for ancient deities, or beings from beyond the earth, pointing to its enormous scale and alignment as evidence. These ideas, while unsupported by hard evidence, persist because the mystery itself refuses to be explained. There are no definitive answers, only fragments. The quarry still lies nearby with its half-cut giants resting in silence. The temple ruins still stand, a fusion of Roman craftsmanship and something more primal, more monolithic beneath. Satellite imagery reveals the vastness of the site, stone steps leading nowhere, columns toppled and buried, and always the trilithon, stoic and unmoved, as though it has always been there, beyond the reach of time, beyond the reach of understanding. Was Baalbek simply a marvel of Roman ambition, a demonstration of what ingenuity, resources, and sheer determination could achieve? Or is it a palimpsest layered with forgotten intentions, lost empires, and ancient memories too vast to decipher? What drove humans to move such stones, to fit them with such care, to build upon them with such reverence? What knowledge have we lost since then? Perhaps the answers lie still buried beneath the site, or perhaps the mystery is the message itself, a reminder of how much we once knew and how much we've forgotten. The stones remain unyielding, silent, waiting. As we leave the megalithic stones of Baalbek behind, the path winds east once more toward the wide, windswept plains of ancient Mesopotamia. There, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carve through the land like twin veins of history, we encounter a structure not just of stone and mortar, but of myth, language, and collective memory. The Tower of Babel. According to the Book of Genesis, it was here on the plain of Shinar that humanity once gathered in unity, speaking a single language, and resolved to build a tower that would reach the heavens, not for worship but for legacy. Let us make a name for ourselves, the people said, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. What followed, the story tells us, was divine intervention. God, disturbed by their ambition, confounded their language and scattered them across the world. The tower was left incomplete, abandoned, a symbol not of success but of broken unity. But was there ever truly a tower? Most scholars agree that the biblical Tower of Babel may be a reflection, however dramatized, of a real and powerful structure that once stood. In Babylon, the Etmani, meaning house of the foundation of heaven and earth. The Etmani was a massive ziggurat dedicated to Marduk, the chief deity of Babylon. Ancient texts suggest it stood over 300 ft tall, with 7 ascending levels clad in gleaming glazed brick and crowned with a shrine that touched the sky. Greek historians such as Herodotus and later Strabo describe the tower with awe, portraying it as a massive spiralling edifice visible for miles. Archaeological records from the Neo-Babylonian Empire, particularly from the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, reference extensive construction projects on this very ziggurat. Clay tablets confirm the existence of a tower of staggering scale, echoing descriptions found in sacred texts. Yet today, almost nothing remains. The structure was eventually dismantled by later empires, its bricks reused, its cores stripped, its purpose forgotten. The site now lies in ruins, a mere shadow of its former grandeur. Only fragments of its foundation linger near modern-day Haifa, Iraq. So where does fact end and myth begin? The story of the Tower of Babel is not only architectural, it's linguistic, theological, and psychological. It attempts to explain why the world speaks in tongues. Why are we as a species divided by words? Could this ancient narrative reflect a cultural memory of a real event? Perhaps the fragmentation of a once unified Mesopotamian civilization into rival city-states, each with its own dialect, beliefs and ambitions? Or does it go deeper? Some have speculated that the Tower of Babel reflects an ancient human desire to reclaim a lost unity with the divine. The act of building upward toward the heavens is not just ambition but longing, a reaching for the eternal. Could it be that the tower wasn't just a structure, but a metaphor for humanity's reach towards something it was never meant to touch? And what of the linguistic angle? Ancient Mesopotamia was home to some of the earliest known scripts: Sumerian cuneiform, Adian, Elamite. These languages, inscribed on clay and stone, tell of complex societies capable of sophisticated thought and administration. The sudden disappearance of some of these languages and the rise of others in their place remains only partially understood. Could the tale of Babel be a stylized retelling of a real historical rupture when empires rose, fell, and new tongues emerged to replace old ones? Then there are more speculative interpretations. Some fringe theorists suggest the tower was not merely symbolic, but technological, a kind of ancient observatory, energy structure, or even a lost relic of a forgotten civilization with advanced capabilities. These ideas lack solid evidence, but they persist in popular imagination, fed by the sheer scale of what the Atmani might have been and by the mystery of its sudden disappearance. Others question whether Babel's fall reflects more than divine wrath. Could it have been a catastrophic event, natural or man-made, that halted its construction? An earthquake? A rebellion? A shifting of political power that made the site obsolete? And why is the story so persistent? The tale of the Tower of Babel appears not just in the Hebrew Bible, but in variations across cultures. In Islamic tradition, a similar story is told with different names and details. Even in pre-Columbian America, in Mayan lore, there are echoes of a great tower and a fall that divides human speech. Is this mere coincidence, or the residue of a shared archetype that transcends geography and language? The ruins at Babylon remain quiet. Dust settles on broken bricks. The call of birds echoes across empty courtyards. Tourists rarely come. Yet beneath the soil, beneath the silence, a deeper story lingers. What did the tower truly represent to those who built it? Was it a house of the gods? A statement of power? A place of pilgrimage? Or was it a mirror reflecting back to us our oldest fears and our oldest dreams? The mystery endures, and somewhere between the fragments of history and the echoes of scripture, the Tower of Babel still stands in memory, in myth, and perhaps in ruins still waiting to speak. From the ruined echo of the Tower of Babel, our path leads us even deeper into the cradle of civilization, to the dust-covered heartlands of southern Mesopotamia, where the earliest empires once rose from mud brick and ambition. Among them was one of the most powerful yet most mysteriously vanished, the Akkadian Empire. Here on the windswept plains near modern-day Iraq, the ruins are sparse, eroded by centuries of sun, wind, and time. Yet once this land was ruled by Sargon of Akkad, a man who forged the world's first known empire over 4,300 years ago. From the Persian Gulf to the foothills of the Zagros Mountains, the Akkadian Empire stretched across a vast swathe of territory, uniting Sumerians and Semitic peoples under one banner, one language, and one vision of centralized power. It was an age of transformation. Ununiform tablets chronicled trade, law, and poetry. Cities flourished. Military conquest expanded the empire's reach. The capital Agad, now lost, was said to shine with silver, cedar, and lapis lazuli brought from distant lands. Sargon's successors, particularly his grandson Naram-Sin, continued his legacy, declaring themselves not just kings but gods. And then it all collapsed. Without warning, the mighty Akkadian Empire began to unravel. By around 2050 BC, it was gone. How could the world's first empire, rich, organised, militarily dominant, vanished so suddenly? What forces brought this towering civilization to its knees? Archaeological records suggest a dramatic turning point. Layers of fine sediment unearthed in formerly fertile regions tell of sudden drought. Evidence of rapid desertification appears across the empire's former territories. Long stretches of farmland turned to dust. Canals dried up. The once dependable rivers shrank back. Famine followed. Could this have been the empire's undoing? Some researchers point to what is now called the 4.2 kiloyear event, a global climate anomaly that struck around 2200 BC. Across the ancient world, civilizations appear to have struggled during this period. The Old Kingdom in Egypt faltered, the Indus Valley cities began to decline, and in Mesopotamia the Akkadians may have faced crop failures, mass migrations and internal unrest, all triggered by prolonged drought. Ununiform inscriptions from the period speak in ominous tones. One Sumerian lament describes cities emptied of their people, fields stripped bare, and the sky refusing to yield rain. It paints a haunting picture of desperation, as if the very order of the world had been overturned. But was it only nature that brought Akkad down? Do other theories explore more human causes? Perhaps the empire stretched thin by conquest and expansion, simply collapsed under its own weight. Revolts from the Gutians, a mountain people from the northeast, are often cited as a destabilizing force. Did they invade a weakened Akkad, toppling it from the outside, or were they opportunistic scavengers, arriving after the collapse had already begun? Still others wonder whether economic decline played a role. Trade routes may have dried up, urban populations could no longer be sustained, and once loyal city-states may have turned against imperial rule, internal strife, power struggles, and administrative breakdown. All these are plausible pieces of the puzzle. But deeper questions remain. Why did Agade, the empire's capital, vanish without a trace? Despite extensive excavations across the region, the city has never been definitively located. Was it destroyed, abandoned, buried beneath modern settlements, or the sands of time? And why did the Akkadian language, once the lingua franca of the empire, persist long after the empire itself fell? If the collapse had been total, wouldn't the language have vanished with it? Some speculate that the fall of Akkad was not one event, but a convergence, a slow unravelling hastened by environmental collapse, social unrest, and foreign invasions. Others push the boundaries further. Fringe theories suggest that the empire may have encountered a catastrophic event not recorded in surviving texts, perhaps a plague, a celestial anomaly, or something else entirely. There are even whispers of a lost technology or knowledge that was buried with the empire never to surface again. These ideas remain unverified. But the mystery persists because the disappearance of the Akkadian Empire is not just a historical curiosity. It is a warning, a reminder that even the most advanced civilizations, even the ones that appear indomitable, can be undone by forces beyond their control or by their own hand. Standing on the cracked earth where Akkadian scribes once etched clay tablets, where kings once declared themselves divine, one can't help but feel the silence. A silence heavy with unanswered questions. What truly happened to Sargon's great vision? What secrets lie beneath the ground, still waiting to be uncovered? Did the empire fall from above, from within, or from the unforgiving climate of a changing world? The answers, if they exist at all, remain buried in the ruins of an empire that reached for eternity and was swallowed by time. As the dust of the Akkadian Empire settles into silence, we find ourselves reaching even further back into the deep layers of Mesopotamian antiquity. Among the most perplexing artifacts ever unearthed from this ancient land is not a temple, nor a weapon, nor a golden idol. It is a list carved into stone and pressed into clay. A simple yet astonishing record that claims to preserve the names of kings who reigned over humanity for thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of years. This is the Sumerian king list. Discovered in fragments at multiple archaeological sites, most notably in the ruins of Nippur and Lhasa, this ancient document presents itself as a chronological account of rulers stretching back to the very dawn of civilization. Written in Sumerian form and inscribed on clay tablets and stone prisms, its structure is deceptively straightforward. It records the names of kings, their cities, and the number of years they reigned. But it is in these numbers that the mystery begins. According to the king list, the earliest rulers did not reign for decades or even centuries, but for thousands of years. The first 8 kings ruling in cities like Eridu, Bad Tibera, and Larak are said to have reigned for a combined total of over 240,000 years. And then the text says the flood swept over. After the flood, the reigns become shorter. Still often extraordinary by modern standards, but more plausible. Eventually, the list begins to align in part with what we know from archaeology and historical records. Kings like Gilgamesh of Uruk appear in both legend and the king list, and later rulers of Lagash-Ur and Akkad correspond with real dynasties. Why does the document begin with such impossibly long reigns? What is the origin of these names and of the flood that marks a boundary between myth and history? Mainstream scholars often interpret the early portions of the king list as symbolic or theological. The exaggerated lifespans may reflect the ancient Sumerians' belief in divine kingship, a time when rulers were seen as demigods, closer to the heavens than to humankind. In this view, the list is not a historical document in the modern sense, but a cosmological narrative, an attempt to frame history within a divine order. The flood too is seen as metaphorical, a cultural reset, much like the great floods that appear in the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the Hebrew Bible, and in many ancient traditions across the world. Could it represent a real memory of a regional deluge preserved and amplified across generations? Or was it something else, a spiritual reckoning, a dividing line between an age of gods and an age of men? And yet, the consistency of the king list across multiple sites and versions raises questions. The early names are often the same, as are the reign lengths. If it were mere legend, why preserve it with such precision? Why record the same sequence of names and durations again and again across centuries? Some researchers speculate that the king list might preserve distant echoes of forgotten dynasties. rulers from a prehistoric era, dimly remembered through oral tradition and encoded into myth. Others go further, proposing connections to lost civilizations or vanished knowledge. Could the enormous reigns refer not to years as we understand them, but to some other system of timekeeping long since lost? Fringe theorists have even suggested extraterrestrial or antediluvian origins, arguing that the earliest rulers were not human at all, but beings from another realm, explaining the impossibly long reigns and the sudden global flood. These interpretations lack archaeological support, but they persist, fueled by the document's enigmatic nature. Still, others take a more psychological approach. The Sumerian king list, they argue, reflects an early attempt to impose order on the chaos of memory, a linear structure placed upon a non-linear past. In a world where oral storytelling was the thread of cultural continuity, perhaps this list was a tool, not to record events exactly as they happened, but to shape a collective identity. Even in its structure, the king list reveals an ancient yearning, a desire to trace a path from creation to civilization, from the gods to the clay brick cities of the south. It seeks to answer the same questions we still ask today. Where do we come from? Who ruled before us? What truths lie buried beneath the names? And yet, the deeper one looks, the more elusive the answers become. The tablet rests now in museums and archives. Its ununiform characters were etched by careful hands over 4,000 years ago. It speaks in numbers we cannot comprehend in timescales that defy belief, and through it all one mystery endures. Is this a list of kings, or is it something more? A relic of a forgotten age too ancient to decode, too important to discard. As we turn the page on the Sumerian king list, one question continues to echo through the ages. What truths lie hidden in the names we can no longer pronounce, in the cities we can no longer find, and in the years we can no longer count? From the mythic rulers of ancient Sumer to the enshrined names etched in time, we now descend into another shadowed chapter of Middle Eastern history, this time into the desolate cliffs that rise above the northwest shores of the Dead Sea. Here, carved into the pale limestone, are the Qumran caves, still silent, yet echoing with one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. The air here is dry, the sun unrelenting. Wind moves softly through the canyons, and the caves, at first glance unremarkable, blend into the natural folds of the cliffside. But in 1947, a Bedouin shepherd, searching for a stray goat, hurled a stone into one of these dark hollows. What he heard was not the rustle of an animal, but the sharp, unmistakable sound of pottery shattering. Inside were clay jars. Inside the jars, scrolls wrapped in linen, blackened with age but intact. As more caves were explored over the following decade, nearly 1,000 manuscripts emerged. Together, they became known as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Their content was astonishing. Among the fragile parchments and papyri were ancient versions of biblical texts, some 1,000 years older than any previously known copies. There were also apocryphal writings, sectarian rules, prophetic visions, and poetic hymns. Some passages closely mirrored known scripture. Others diverged sharply, presenting theological ideas, names, and practices lost to time. But who wrote them? Most scholars believe the answer lies in a reclusive Jewish sect known as the Essenes. Mentioned by the Roman historian Josephus, by Foe of Alexandria, and by Pliny the Elder, the Essenes were described as a devout ascetic community that rejected the corruption of the temple in Jerusalem. They withdrew to the wilderness, practicing ritual purity, communal living, and intense study of sacred texts. Qumran, with its orderly layout, ritual baths, and communal structures, seemed to fit the profile. And so, a theory emerged that Qumran was the same settlement, that these scrolls were the product of their scribes, that the caves had served as a library or a hiding place when Roman legions swept through Judea around 68 BC, destroying towns during the First Jewish-Roman War. But not all are convinced. Some scholars have challenged the Essene theory, suggesting instead that the scrolls came from Jerusalem, hidden in the wilderness by fleeing priests during a time of upheaval. Others propose that Qumran was not a monastic compound, but a fortress, a pottery factory, or even a centre for manuscript production serving various groups. The lack of clear labels, names, or consistent authorship in the scrolls leaves the door open to interpretation. And then there are the scrolls themselves. One text, known as the War Scroll, describes an apocalyptic battle between the Sons of Light and the Sons of Darkness. Another outlines the rules of a rigid community obsessed with purity and secrecy. Others contain cryptic references to a teacher of righteousness, a mysterious, unnamed figure persecuted by a rival, possibly a corrupt high priest. Who was this teacher? A historical prophet, a messianic figure, a precursor to later religious traditions? The scrolls are deliberately vague, avoiding personal names, intentional omission, or loss over time. Among the most intriguing documents is the Copper Scroll, unlike the others, in that it was engraved on metal, not parchment. It does not contain prophecy or theology, but a list of locations and vast quantities of gold, silver, and precious vessels said to be hidden across the land. Is it a genuine inventory of temple, treasures, a symbolic riddle, or an elaborate fiction? To this day, no confirmed treasure has ever been found. The mystery of Kuman and the scrolls touches not only archaeology and religion, but identity, belief, and historical continuity. The scrolls illuminate a moment when Judaism was not monolithic, but a patchwork of competing sects, messianic expectations, and political turmoil. Some texts seem to anticipate themes that would later echo in Christianity and other traditions. Did the Essenes or whomever wrote these scrolls glimpse a future fracture in their faith? Or were they merely one voice among many, preserved by chance rather than by destiny? And what might still remain, hidden in caves yet uncatched? Some scholars believe that only a fraction of Kuman's manuscripts have been recovered. Lutters, erosion, and time may have taken their toll, but the cliffs stretch for miles. Could more scrolls still lie in wait, sealed in darkness, preserving ancient words that could rewrite what we think we know? The silence around Kuman is profound. The scrolls, once lost for centuries, now sit in climate-controlled vaults, studied word by word, but the identity of their authors, the full purpose of their writings, and the fate of their vanished community remain unsettled. Were the Essenes custodians of a spiritual truth hidden from the world, or were they just one of many threads in the rich, fractured fabric of Second Temple Judaism? The caves offer no answers, only stillness, and as the sun sets behind the cliffs, casting long shadows over the Dead Sea, one is left to wonder how many voices of the past remain buried, waiting to be found. And what will they say when we are finally ready to listen? As we leave the shadowed cliffs of Qumran and the hidden scrolls of a forgotten sect, our journey turns southward toward the shimmering waters of the Persian Gulf. Here, where desert meets sea, where date palms sway beneath a relentless sun, and ancient trade winds still whisper across the dunes. We search for a city spoken of in myth and memory, a place once called the Gateway to Paradise. This is the story of Dilmun, a land lost to time. The earliest mention of Dilmun comes not from Greek historians or later Islamic chroniclers, but from Sumerian tablets etched over 4,000 years ago. To the Sumerians, Dilmun was a land of purity, untouched by sickness and death. In one creation myth, it is described as a place where the raven does not croak, the lion does not kill, and no one says, "I am sick." It was in essence an ancient Eden. But Dilmun was more than a myth. By the 3rd millennium BC, it appeared repeatedly in economic records and royal inscriptions. Merchants listed Dilmun as a vital trading partner, an emporium where copper, dates, lapis lazuli, and exotic woods passed through en route from the Indus Valley to Mesopotamia. Archaeological evidence shows that Dilmun served as a commercial hub connecting the great civilizations of the ancient world. And, yet, despite its central role in early history, its location remained a mystery for centuries. Where was this legendary land of the gods? Modern scholars largely agree that Dilmun was centered in what is now the island nation of Bahrain, an archipelago in the Gulf that to this day yields traces of a vibrant and ancient culture. Excavations at sites like Qalat al-Bahrain, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, have revealed layers of settlement, temples and burial mounds stretching back to the Bronze Age. Thousands of tumuli or burial mounds cover the landscape of Bahrain, some modest, others monumental. Were these merely grave markers or something more sacred? Echoes of the Sumerian belief that Dilmun was where the gods first walked the earth. Further evidence of trade, Mesopotamian seals, India Valley weights and copper ingots points to Bahrain as a thriving entropy in ancient times. The location perfectly poised between Mesopotamia and the Indian subcontinent lends weight to the idea of Dilmun as a commercial crossroads. But even here, questions linger. Was Bahrain the true heart of Dilmun, or just one of its outposts? Could Dilmun have been a more expansive maritime culture encompassing parts of the eastern Arabian Peninsula, Kuwait, and even the Saudi coast? Some researchers argue that the textual references to Dilmun suggest a land larger and more mythic than any single island. Ancient inscriptions often describe it as being in the east where the sun rises. Others note that the descriptions of Dilmun's gardens, freshwater springs and holy mountains don't quite match Bahrain's flat, arid terrain. Might the Dilmun of myth be a layered memory, part real, part symbolic, a fusion of multiple coastal settlements idealized into a single holy land? The most tantalizing clue of all lies in the ambiguity of the name. In some texts, Dilmun is a place of trade and tribute. In others, it is a sacred realm beyond the sea. Could it be that Dilmun began as a real place, and through centuries of storytelling became something more, an origin story for human civilization itself? Fringe theories have suggested even wilder possibilities. Some connect Dilmun with the lost city of Atlantis, drawing parallels between the idea of a paradise destroyed and a civilization forgotten. Others claim that the burial mounds conceal secrets not just of the dead, but of an ancient race of people who predated the Sumerians and disappeared without explanation. These ideas remain speculative. Yet the allure persists because even after decades of excavations, Dilmun has not given up all its secrets. Bahrain's ancient capital may have been located at Khalat al-Bahrain, but its temple foundations reveal surprisingly sophisticated engineering, massive stone walls, intricate water management systems, and deliberate alignments that suggest not only economic importance, but spiritual significance. And the tombs spread by the thousands across the island continue to yield unexpected artifacts, seals bearing unknown symbols, tools of foreign design, and bodies laid to rest with a solemnity that speaks of deep cultural ritual. Who were these people? What did they believe? And why did Dilmun, once a shining link between empires, fade so completely from the historical stage? Some historians point to shifting trade routes, rising and falling sea levels, and the emergence of new powers in Mesopotamia and Persia as likely causes for Dilmun's decline. Others wonder if climate change or political upheaval disrupted life so thoroughly that the city was gradually abandoned, leaving behind little more than names in ancient texts and the hushed silence of crumbling walls. Even today, the name Dilmun resonates across the region. Locals still speak of the land's ancient legacy, and modern Bahrain, with its blend of ancient ruins and modern skylines, seems to echo that same paradox of a place both real and imagined, buried and remembered. So, what truly was Dilmun? A trading post, a mythic paradise, the birthplace of gods, or simply a forgotten waypoint in humanity's long journey towards civilization? As archaeologists continue to sift the sands and decode the tablets, one truth remains. Dilmun straddles the boundary between memory and myth, a city mentioned in whispers, half-lit by legend, and perhaps still hiding something more. Beneath its mounds, beneath its stones, and beneath the waves of the ever-shifting sea as the echoes of Dilmun fade into the sea breeze, our attention shifts inland to the fertile plains of northern Syria, where fields stretch toward the horizon and ancient stone still rises from the earth. Here, amid olive groves and dry winds, once stood a structure that continues to stir both wonder and uncertainty. A place of mystery carved in basalt and silence. The Temple of Endara. At first glance, its remains are unassuming. Worn foundations, fragmented pillars, and broken reliefs scattered under an open sky. But then the footprints emerge. Carved into the stone threshold of the temple are three immense impressions, two leading in, one facing out. They are not the princes of humans. Each measures over 3 feet long as though left by a giant striding through the sanctuary. No one knows why they were made or what they were meant to represent. It is these silent footprints that first capture the imagination. But the deeper mystery lies in the temple itself. Discovered in 1955 near the modern village of Endara, the site dates back to the Iron Age, with its earliest phase believed to have been constructed around 1300 BC. The temple shares striking architectural similarities with descriptions of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. Massive limestone and basalt blocks, a tripartite floor plan, and elaborate decorative motifs including lions, sphinxes, and winged cherubim. Could Adara have served as a model for Solomon's temple? Or was it simply built within a broader cultural and religious tradition shared across the Levant? Scholars are divided. The similarities are undeniable. Both structures feature an outer courtyard, a main hall, and an inner sanctum or holy of holies. Both were adorned with mythical guardian figures, carved reliefs, and ornate entrances. The size and scale too are comparable, yet there is no direct textual link between the two. No inscription at Adara names a deity or king. No scripture refers to it directly. What we do have are the carvings, high-relief depictions of lions and sphinxes flanking the entryway, guarding the temple as if from an invisible threshold between worlds. A stylized tree of life appears in several places, flanked by griffins and other composite creatures. Were these purely symbolic, or did they reflect specific beliefs now lost to time? The temple was clearly a place of great significance. Massive basalt blocks form the foundation, precisely cut and placed without mortar. The craftsmanship suggests skilled builders and access to vast resources. Yet, Endara does not seem to have been the centre of a mighty empire. There are no palaces, no grand cities, no surrounding administrative complexes. Why such a monumental temple here in relative isolation? Some archaeologists suggest it was a regional sanctuary, a sacred site drawing worshippers from across northern Syria and southeastern Anatolia. Others speculate that Endara was part of a wider religious network tied to the enigmatic Aramean and Syro-Hittite cultures that flourished after the collapse of the Hittite Empire. But still the question lingers, to whom was it dedicated? No definitive answer has emerged. The iconography suggests a storm or fertility god, possibly Hadad or Ishtar, but without inscriptions we are left to interpret symbols and patterns. The tree of life motif, the lions, the massive footprints, each piece hints at meaning, but none reveal the whole. And then there's the most haunting aspect of all, the footprints themselves. Were they meant to represent the steps of a deity entering and leaving the temple, a visual metaphor for divine presence? Some scholars believe they were intentionally exaggerated to symbolize the immense power of the god who inhabited the sanctuary. Others wonder whether they were part of a ritual. Perhaps initiates followed the steps during ceremonies, reenacting a sacred myth. And yet, could they have a more literal origin? Stories of giants, gods walking among men, and sacred architecture built to honour beings of immense size are not uncommon in ancient traditions from Mesopotamia to the Hebrew Bible, from Egypt to Anatolia. Are these echoes of a lost mythology, artistic flourishes, or distant memories of something more elusive? Fringe interpretations suggest the footprints point to an ancient race of giants, or to contact with advanced beings whose presence once marked sacred spaces across the ancient world. These ideas, while lacking direct evidence, find a receptive audience among those who believe that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge and perhaps contact that modern history has overlooked. But even without such theories, Endara remains a place of unanswered questions. In recent years, tragedy has compounded the mystery. During the Syrian civil war, the temple was severely damaged by aerial bombing in 2018. Much of its intricate stonework was destroyed. What had stood for over 3,000 years, weathering storms, wars, and the slow erosion of time, was reduced to rubble in a matter of moments. The loss is incalculable, and yet fragments remain. Photos, architectural drawings, and digital reconstructions allow scholars to piece together what once stood. And the memory of the footprints, the idea of something immense and invisible moving through the world, continues to inspire reflection. What god once stood here? What stories were told within these walls? What power did the people of Endara believe they were invoking? And perhaps more importantly, what else lies buried beneath the soil of Syria, waiting to reveal not just history, but the beliefs and imaginations of a people who saw the world through a different lens? The ruins whisper, but they do not answer. And as the dust settles once more over the stone, the Temple of Endara remains what it has always been, a monument to something larger than understanding, and a riddle still waiting to be solved. From the shattered sanctuary of Endara, our journey continues across the vast sun-scorched deserts of northern Arabia. Here, in a land shaped by wind and silence, once rose a kingdom that left few monuments, but cast a long shadow in the records of its neighbours. A kingdom of tents and traders, of queens and warriors, half history, half legend. This is the story of the lost kingdom of Kedar. The desert tells little. Sand buries cities, and time erases the trails of caravans. Yet in the margins of ancient texts from Assyrian annals to biblical verses, the name Kedar appears again and again, sometimes as an ally, often as a threat, always as a mystery. The Kedarites were a powerful Arab tribal confederation that flourished between the 9th and 4th centuries BC. Centered somewhere in northern Arabia, possibly stretching into the southern Levant and parts of modern-day Jordan and Iraq, they are remembered not through monumental ruins, but through fragments, inscriptions, scattered artifacts, and the reluctant testimony of rival empires. What makes Kir so enigmatic is the contrast between its apparent power and its near invisibility in the archaeological record. Assyrian kings like Tiglath-Pileser III and Esarhaddon mentioned Kedar as a significant political force, rich in camels, incense, and military might. One inscription from the 7th century BC speaks of a campaign against a queen of Kedar named Tilkanu, from whom the Assyrians took a statue of a goddess as spoils of war. Her name and that of another Queen Yati stand out in stark contrast to most ancient Near Eastern records where male rulers dominate. In Kir, it seems women held unusual authority. Who were these queens? What power did they wield in a culture presumed to be tribal and patriarchal? The Hebrew Bible also speaks of Kir as descendants of Ishmael, as tent dwellers, archers, and caravan leaders. The prophet Isaiah refers to their flocks and wealth. While the Song of Songs evokes the tents of Kedar as a symbol of dark and noble beauty, even the Greeks, distant though they were, seemed aware of Kedar's existence, albeit through the distorted lens of hearsay. But where was this kingdom? Unlike the urban centres of Mesopotamia or the stone sanctuaries of the Levant, Kir left behind no grand cities or ziggurats. Their domain was likely nomadic or semi-nomadic, composed of mobile encampments, temporary markets, and trade hubs that shifted with the seasons. Their economy depended on long-distance dance trade, frankincense, myrrh, spices, and precious goods flowing north from southern Arabia toward the Mediterranean. Some scholars believe the Kirites controlled portions of the incense route, a lucrative and dangerous network of caravan trails that passed through desert fortresses and oases. Others suggest they built temporary settlements now lost to erosion, or constructed their structures in perishable materials that did not endure the centuries. Only a handful of artifacts and inscriptions have been definitively linked to Kir. Chief among them a group of Aramaic texts found in northwestern Arabia and Syria. These refer to kings and queens of Ked, and sometimes to their deities, but the sites themselves remain ambiguous. Are we looking at Kedar's heartland or its outer frontier? And what of their religion? The scant inscriptions suggest the worship of deities such as Ataratis, Alilat, and a god known simply as Dusamawi, Lord of Heaven. Some of these names appear in later Arabian and even Naboshian contexts, raising the possibility that Kir helped shape religious ideas that would ripple across the peninsula for centuries. But the full picture remains elusive. Were the Kirites cultural ancestors of the Nabateans who would later build Petra and control vast desert trade networks? Or were they a separate people, their identity lost when their power declined and their lands were absorbed into neighbouring empires? There are other more speculative theories. Some researchers have asked whether the Kirites were not entirely nomadic, but possessed fortified desert cities that simply await discovery, buried under layers of sand, mistaken for later ruins, or destroyed by time and conquest. Others have pointed to unexplored regions of northern Arabia, still difficult to access today, where satellite imagery has revealed ancient settlement patterns that remain unexcavated. And then there are the legends, local traditions that speak of vanished tribes, hidden tombs, and ancient queens who once ruled vast stretches of the desert with wisdom and might. Could Tilkunu and Yati have been more than fleeting names in a foreign, king's inscription? Could the power of Kedar have rivaled that of more celebrated civilizations had it left behind stone instead of song? The problem is not absence but interpretation. The desert preserves differently. In the absence of great walls or temples, history must be pieced together from traces, the lines of a trade route, the mention of a queen in a conquered enemy's boast, the shards of a ceramic vessel found far from home. And so, the kingdom of Kir stands like a mirage on the edge of recorded history, seen but never fully grasped. A nation of tents and warriors, of queens and gods, whose influence once stretched across the sands, yet whose legacy survives only in scattered whispers. What truths lie buried beneath the shifting dunes of northern Arabia? How much have we already lost, and how much remains just out of sight? The answers may yet emerge if we listen closely, and if we learn to read not only what is written in stone but what has been carried on the wind from the windswept deserts once ruled by the elusive kingdom of Kir. Our journey now turns east again into the river valleys of ancient Mesopotamia, where stories were not merely told but etched into clay, baked in fire, and passed down across millennia. Here, among crumbling libraries and shattered temples, lies a fragment of one of humanity's oldest and most enduring mysteries, the tale of a great flood. A tale preserved not in myth alone, but in a humble object of clay known today as the Ark Tablet. It is small, unassuming, just a palm-sized disc of ancient earth covered in tightly packed ununiform script, darkened with age. Its surface is scarred by time, and yet within its faint carvings lies a story so familiar, so hauntingly precise, that it challenges everything we thought we knew about the origins of biblical tradition. The tablet surfaced quietly, purchased from a dealer in 2009 by British Museum curator Irving Finkel. It came from Iraq, likely from the ruins of an ancient Babylonian city. Its inscriptions written in the Akkadian language date to around 1750 BC, but the tale it tells may be far older. As Finkel began the painstaking work of translating the lines, the fragments came together into something extraordinary, a Mesopotamian version of the flood narrative. It speaks of a god warning a mortal man to build an ark to save life from an impending deluge. The man obeys, gathers animals, and survives the flood that drowns the world. But the details are where the mystery deepens. Unlike the wooden boat of the biblical Noah, or the massive vessel of Utnapishtim in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Ark Tablet describes something unexpected, a massive circular craft, a coracle woven of reeds and sealed with bitumen. The dimensions are specific and the design is practical, suggesting a vessel that might have truly floated on the floodwaters of ancient Mesopotamia. Why a circle? Could this reflect a deeper authenticity or simply a regional variation in storytelling? The idea of a great flood is not unique to Mesopotamia or the Hebrew Bible. It echoes across cultures from the legends of Deucalion in Greece to the tales of Manu in India to flood myths among the ancient Chinese and even pre-Columbian Mesoamericans. But here in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates, the story takes on a striking clarity and historical specificity. The Ark Tablet adds to a long lineage of Mesopotamian flood accounts, including the Atrasi epic and the more widely known Epic of Gilgamesh. In both, the gods unleash a flood to punish or reset humanity. A chosen man is warned, builds a boat, and survives. The world begins anew. But what inspired these stories? Some scholars propose a real flood, perhaps a catastrophic inundation of the Mesopotamian river plains around 3000 BC when seasonal rains, rising rivers and sudden breaches could easily have overwhelmed early settlements. Archaeological layers of silt at sites like Kish suggest sudden flooding events. To those who lived through them, the devastation would have felt truly apocalyptic. Could the story have grown from such a memory, passed down, elaborated and mythologized through the ages? Or was it something more? Some researchers have argued that the Mesopotamian flood myth may have originated not just as historical memory, but as cosmological allegory, a tale of divine order, of chaos defeated and harmony restored. In this reading, the flood is not just water, it is the unmaking of creation itself, held at bay by a chosen man's obedience and sacrifice. And yet, the parallels with later biblical texts are difficult to ignore. The book of Genesis, composed centuries later, describes Noah's Ark, the gathering of animals, the olive branch, and the eventual return to dry land. Are these shared roots, borrowed myths, independent recollections of the same distant past? The Ark Tablet raises unsettling questions. If the flood story predates the Hebrew Bible by over 1,000 years, what does that say about the transmission of sacred narratives? Did the writers of Genesis draw from Babylonian sources? Or were they all drawing from a still more ancient, now lost oral tradition? Then there are the more speculative interpretations. Some fringe theorists propose that the flood was not regional but global, that it may have been caused by an astronomical event, a sudden climate shift, or even an impact from space. Others suggest that the story is not myth at all, but a preserved record of a forgotten chapter in human history, a reset event encoded in allegory. There is no consensus, and perhaps there never will be. The Ark tablet now rests safely in the British Museum, its script carefully catalogued, its words meticulously studied, but its meaning remains open. It is not just a story, it is a key, one that may unlock new understandings of how ancient peoples viewed their world, their gods, and their place within both. Why was this story preserved with such care? Why was the Ark round, not rectangular? And how did the same narrative survive across cultures, across centuries, across empires? Perhaps the flood speaks to something primal, a fear, a memory, or a hope that lies buried not only in tablets and texts, but deep within us all. And so we return to the clay, to the carved lines left by a steady hand nearly 4,000 years ago. Words meant to endure, a warning or a lesson, or perhaps simply a story passed from one generation to the next. But what other stories remain unread? What fragments still lie beneath the sands of Mesopotamia, waiting to speak? And when they do, will we be ready to listen? As we leave behind the water-worn stories of the Mesopotamian flood, the clay tablets still damp with echoes of catastrophe, we turn now toward the source of those earlier stories, toward a civilization so old, so foundational, that nearly everything we know about ancient Mesopotamia begins with them. And yet they vanished quietly without conquest or collapse in battle. This is the enigma of the Sumerians. In the southern reaches of Iraq, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers spread into fertile plains and marshland, once stood cities of astonishing complexity. Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Eridu, Nippur, names etched into both earth and myth. These were the cities of the Sumerians, builders of the first known civilization on Earth. Here, over 5,000 years ago, they developed ununiform writing, built monumental temples known as ziggurats, recorded law, told stories of gods and kings, and governed city-states through elaborate administrative systems. They tracked the stars, measured time, catalogued medicines, and contemplated justice. The world's first schools, contracts, maps, and poetry were all Sumerian. And then they were gone. By around 2000 BC, the distinct Sumerian culture had faded. Their language, once spoken across city squares, temple halls, and royal courts, vanished from daily life. The people didn't disappear overnight, but the civilization did. Assimilated, absorbed, submerged beneath new powers, new languages, and new myths. What happened? Traditional accounts tell us that the Sumerians were gradually overtaken by the Akkadians, whose Semitic language eventually supplanted Sumerian in common speech. The Akkadians adopted Sumerian writing, religion and institutions, but rebranded them in their own image. Later came the Amorites, the Babylonians, and eventually the Assyrians. With each wave, the Sumerians were not destroyed, but overwritten. Yet this explanation, while logical, doesn't fully satisfy. How does a civilization so advanced, so foundational, simply dissolve into the fabric of others without war, without calamity, without a defining end? Archaeological records show no widespread destruction around 2000 BC. There are no signs of massive invasions or population collapse. Instead, there is something quieter, more difficult to trace, of fading. Some scholars point to environmental factors. The southern Mesopotamian plain depended on careful irrigation. Centuries of agriculture may have led to salinization, salt building up in the soil, choking crops, reducing yields. Over time, this could have made farming unsustainable, forcing migrations northward, and opening the door for northern powers to dominate. Others suggest shifting trade routes, changing river paths, and political fragmentation weakened the Sumerian cities. No longer unified, they became vulnerable. Not to conquest, but to absorption. Their identity did not end in flames, but was slowly diluted. But other mysteries remain. Why did the Sumerian language disappear so thoroughly? It is not related to any other known tongue. What linguists call a language isolate. After being used for centuries as a literary and religious language, even that function eventually ceased. Unlike Latin in medieval Europe, Sumerian left no direct linguistic descendants. Could it be that the Sumerians themselves were not indigenous to southern Mesopotamia, but migrants from elsewhere, bringing their language, customs, and technologies with them? Some have speculated, based on sudden urban growth and cultural innovations around 3100 BC, that the Sumerians arrived from the east, possibly from the Iranian plateau or even the Indus Valley. Yet no clear archaeological evidence has confirmed such origins. There are more fringe theories, of course, suggesting that the Sumerians were not merely early humans, but survivors of a lost pre-flood civilization. Some even claim they were guided by gods or visitors from beyond the earth, pointing to their detailed astronomical knowledge, their myths of the Anunnaki, powerful sky beings, and their sudden leap from prehistory to complexity. But such theories, while captivating, remain speculative. Still, the Samaritans themselves told stories of their own beginnings, of cities founded by gods, of kings who ruled for tens of thousands of years, of a flood that reshaped the world. They spoke of a time before time when divine rule descended from the heavens to Eridu, the first city. Could these tales be mythologized memories of a deeper past? Of a people who remembered not just their own rise, but something even earlier, some long-forgotten turning point in human history? As excavations continue across Iraq and the broader Fertile Crescent, new discoveries occasionally surface: seals, tablets, foundations of forgotten temples. Each piece adds a little more to the picture, but the whole remains elusive. We know the Sumerians were masterful record keepers, and yet we still lack a full account of their origin and an explanation for their end. Perhaps the mystery lies not in a single event, but in the nature of memory itself. Civilizations do not always fall. They fade, echoing into the systems, languages, and beliefs of those who come after. And yet the disappearance of the Sumerians lingers like a question carved into wet clay and left to dry in the sun. What more lies buried beneath the floodplains of southern Iraq? What libraries, what names, what voices still rest in the silence of ancient mud brick? And when the dust clears, will we recognize them when they speak again? As the final echoes of the Sumerians dissolve into the shifting sands of history, a lone monument still rises from the plains of southern Iraq, weathered, immense, and haunting. A silent witness to the dawn of civilization, it towers above the ruins of its once great city like a stairway to the gods. Its mud brick core is baked hard by time and sun. This is the ziggurat of Ur, a temple, a symbol, a mystery that continues to guard the forgotten rituals of an ancient world. The site of Ur lies near the modern city of Nasiriyah, close to the banks of the now silent Euphrates River. In antiquity, this was one of the crown jewels of Sumer, a city of towering walls, bustling markets, and sacred spaces. And at its heart stood the ziggurat, dedicated to Nana, the moon god, patron deity of the city. Unlike the smooth-sided pyramids of Egypt, the ziggurat is stepped, layered like a mountain built by human hands. Its original form, completed around 2100 BC, under the rule of King Uramu, would have risen with 3 terraces stacked upon each other, accessible by monumental staircases climbing toward the heavens. At its summit stood a shrine now long lost, where priests likely performed rites under the stars. But what was the true purpose of this towering structure? Mainstream archaeology tells us that ziggurats were temples, literal and symbolic links between earth and sky. In Mesopotamian belief, the gods did not dwell in distant realms, but in the skies above, close enough to see and influence the world below. The ziggurat was a sacred bridge, a man-made mountain reaching toward divinity, perhaps echoing memories of real mountains long since left behind by migrants who settled in the low plains of Sumer. Yet the ziggurat of Ur invites deeper questions. Why build something so massive, so labour-intensive in an era with no cranes, no metal tools as we know them, no machines? The bricks, millions of them, were made by hand, stacked layer by layer into a structure meant to last not centuries but millennia. And indeed, it has. Even after thousands of years and the devastating effects of erosion, looting, and war, the ziggurat still stands. Its size and precision hint at more than practicality. This was not merely a religious monument, it was a statement, a cosmic anchor aligning the city with the divine, and perhaps with something greater. Some have speculated that the ziggurat's dimensions and orientation may encode astronomical knowledge, that it may have served not only as a temple, but as an ancient observatory, tracking the movement of the moon, the stars, the changing seasons. The fact that it was dedicated to Nana, the moon god, adds weight to such theories. Still, others wonder about the symbolic layers embedded in the structure itself. Each level of the ziggurat represented a different realm: the earthly base, the middle sky, and the heavenly summit. Climbing its stairs may not have been merely a physical act, but a ritual journey from the mundane to the sacred. The deeper we look, the more the ziggurat of Ur seems less like a building and more like an idea made solid, a worldview rendered in brick. And then, of course, there is the enduring connection to a much older and much more enigmatic story. In the book of Genesis, a Tower of Babel is said to have been built to reach the heavens, prompting God to confuse the languages of humanity and scatter them across the earth. Though no direct evidence links the ziggurat of Ur to this tale, many scholars believe the biblical narrative may have been inspired by Mesopotamian ziggurats like Ur's, especially to ancient exiles living in Babylon who would have seen these colossal structures firsthand. Could the memory of Ur's ziggurat towering over the plains have transformed over centuries into a myth of pride and divine punishment? Fringe theories go further still. Some suggest that the ziggurats were not merely religious centres, but technological platforms, perhaps resonant with energies we no longer understand or aligned to forces long forgotten. Others draw attention to the eerie similarities between ziggurats across Mesopotamia and pyramidal structures found in distant parts of the world, from Egypt to Mesoamerica, asking whether these parallel designs point to a lost global understanding or simply to the universal human desire to reach upward toward the unknown. But no extraordinary explanation is needed to stand in awe of the ziggurat of its massive staircases, still climbable today, seem to invite visitors upward, not just physically, but across time. As one ascends its weathered steps, it's easy to imagine the sounds of ancient prayers, the scent of incense rising to the sky, the silver disk of the moon hovering above a city that once believed the gods walked among them. Archaeologists continue to study the site. In recent years, efforts have been made to preserve and restore parts of the structure, but the ziggurat itself keeps its secrets. No inscriptions explain its rituals in full. No records tell us precisely what happened inside the summit shrine. The ceremonies, the prayers, the intentions, they have vanished like smoke in the desert air. What remains is stone and silence, a monument not only to faith but to mystery. Why did the people invest such monumental effort into this temple? What did they hope to reach or summon from the heavens above? Was this truly the house of a god or something else entirely? And as we look upon its towering form today, we are left to wonder how much of the divine is built by human hands and how much remains just out of reach, still watching from the stars above. As we descend once more from the sacred terraces of the ziggurat of Ur, the landscape around us shifts, dusty, broad, and deceptively empty. But beneath the quiet plains of ancient Babylonia lie traces of a people who came from the shadows of the Zagros Mountains, a people who ruled for centuries, yet left behind few monuments, fewer records, and almost no clear sense of their origin. This is the enduring mystery of the Kassites. When Babylon fell to the Hittites in the 16th century BC, the city was left vulnerable, its ziggurat stood still, its temples silent. And then from the east came the Kassites, a group scarcely mentioned in the historical record before that moment, suddenly rising to power and restoring order in one of the most important cities of the ancient world. They would rule Babylonia for over 400 years, longer than many better-known dynasties, and yet, what do we truly know of them? The Kassites did not come with fire and destruction. They entered Babylon not as conquerors in the traditional sense, but as stabilizers. They preserved Babylonian culture, adopted the Akkadian language, rebuilt temples, and maintained the structure of the existing society. In many ways, they became more Babylonian than the Babylonians themselves. But who were they? Linguistically, the Kassite language is a puzzle. It is not Semitic nor Indo-European. Like Sumerian, it appears to be a language isolate, unrelated to any known linguistic family. Only a few dozen Kassite words survive, mostly names and terms for horses and chariots. And those few traces hint at a unique culture, one that was both part of Mesopotamian civilization and somehow apart from it. Their origins are equally obscure. Most scholars believe they came from the Zagros Mountains east of the Tigris, but there are no clear archaeological layers pointing to a unified Kassite homeland. Were they a tribal confederation, a displaced warrior elite, or remnants of an even older vanished culture that predated the great empires of Mesopotamia? The mystery deepens with their monuments, or rather the lack of them. Unlike the Assyrians, who covered their palaces with bas-reliefs, or the Babylonians, who left vast libraries of ununiform tablets, the Kassites left relatively little behind. Their art is modest, their inscriptions rare. Even their capital city, Durugzu, built in the 14th century BC near modern-day Baghdad, remains only partially excavated. Its ziggurat, massive and weathered, still stands, but much of the city lies beneath layers of soil, untouched. Why would a dynasty that ruled for so long leave behind so few traces? One possibility is cultural modesty. The Kassites may have seen themselves not as cultural revolutionaries, but as caretakers, preserving the traditions of the land they inherited. Rather than imposing their own identity, they blended into the existing religious and social systems, allowing Babylonian priests and scribes to continue as before. But another possibility is more intriguing, that much of their culture remains hidden, still buried or lost to time. What we know of the Kassites is only a fragment of a much larger, richer story waiting to be uncovered. Even their religious beliefs are only partially understood. While they worship the traditional gods of Mesopotamia, Marduk, Ishtar, Shamash, they also introduced new deities such as Shukamuna and Shumalia, obscure figures believed to have been protective war gods or royal patrons. These gods, unlike the rest of the Mesopotamian pantheon, seem to have had no temples, no myths, no established iconography. Were they ancestral spirits, tribal totems, symbols of an oral tradition lost to history? Equally fascinating is the Kassites' contribution to horsemanship and warfare. They are credited with advancing the use of horse-drawn chariots, an innovation that transformed ancient warfare across the Near East. Their words for chariot parts and horse breeds survive in Akkadian texts, suggesting a deep, possibly sacred connection to these animals. Some scholars believe their rise to power was closely tied to mastery of this new military technology, and yet for all their accomplishments, the Kassites eventually disappeared quietly without a dramatic collapse. By the 12th century BC, their control over Babylon weakened. Invasions from the Elamites and internal unrest eroded their rule. Within a few generations, they were gone, absorbed, erased, or simply forgotten. No Kassite chronicles survived. No epic tales glorify their kings. Even in later Babylonian texts, they are little more than a footnote mentioned briefly with neither reverence nor blame. It is as though they passed through history like a shadow, visible for a moment, then gone. But their impact was lasting. They preserved Babylon when it might have fallen. They maintained its temples, stabilized its politics, and passed down its knowledge. Without them, the Babylonian legacy that would later influence Assyria, Persia, and even the Greeks might never have survived. Still, the mystery remains. Who were the Kassites? Where did they come from? And what compelled them so suddenly and so successfully to step into one of the world's most important cities and make it their own? Perhaps answers lie beneath the unexcavated ruins of Durug-Galzu. Perhaps they are encoded in tablets still lying in storage rooms and museum vaults, waiting for someone to read their faded script. Or perhaps, like so much of the ancient world, the truth about the Kassites was never meant to be preserved in stone, but only in the quiet traces they left behind. A people without a homeland, a dynasty without a myth, a mystery still waiting to speak. Will we one day uncover the forgotten voice of the Kassites? Or will they remain as they always have been, half known, half lost, and wholly compelling? As the legacy of the Kassites fades into the shadows of forgotten dynasties, our journey winds southward through harsh desert winds and the crimson sands of Jordan. There, hidden within the rose-coloured cliffs of the Shara Mountains, lies a city unlike any other. Silent, monumental, and carved entirely from stone. This is Petra, the ancient city of the Nabateans, a place of awe and riddles, a city not built upon the earth, but sculpted from it. To reach Petra, one must pass through the Sick, a narrow, winding gorge where sunlight barely touches the sandstone walls that rise up on either side. The passage is long and silent, an architectural throat leading into mystery, and then suddenly it opens, and there emerging from the rock like a vision stands the Cosme or treasury. Its Corinthian columns, its carved urns and pediments shimmer in pink and gold beneath the desert sun. It is a sight that seems too perfect, too ornate for a city that dates back more than 2,000 years. But Petra was never just a city. It was a statement, a sanctuary, a kingdom carved in defiance of time, founded by the Nabateans, an enigmatic Arab people whose origins remain unclear. Petra rose to prominence around the 4th century BC. From here, they controlled the incense and spice trade routes that crossed the Arabian desert, connecting the riches of India and southern Arabia to the ports of the Mediterranean. Wealth flowed through Petra, and it shows. Elaborate facades, monumental tombs, sacred altars, and even an amphitheatre were all hewed from solid rock. But Petra's most astonishing quality lies not just in its beauty, but in its resilience. The Nabotans built a thriving city in one of the most arid regions on Earth. How did they do it? Archaeological evidence reveals a sophisticated water management system, canals, cisterns, rock-cut aqueducts, and even ceramic pipes. They channeled every drop of rainfall, capturing and storing it for dry seasons. Petra was not just a city of stone, it was a city of water engineered to survive where few others could, and yet much about the Nabateans remains a mystery. They left few written records. Most of what we know comes from foreign sources, Greek and Roman historians, traders, and later travellers. The Nabateans had their own language and script, but few inscriptions survive. Their temples are adorned with abstract symbols, weathered figures, and mysterious altars, but their religious practices remain largely unknown. Who are the gods they worshipped? What rituals took place within Petra's rock-hewn sanctuaries? One of the most enigmatic sites in Petra is the high place of sacrifice perched high above the city. Reached by a winding climb through craggy stairways and stone-cut paths, it consists of 2 obelisks and a wide flat platform thought to have been used for offerings. To whom, and why, in such a secluded, perilous place? Mainstream scholars believe the Nabotans practiced a form of Arabian polytheism, worshipping deities like Dushara, a powerful god of the mountains, and Aluza, a goddess associated with fertility and protection. But beyond names and vague associations, their theology is obscured. The iconography within Petra only deepens the mystery. Many of the city's facades contain square-cut niches known as battles, representations of deities without form, without face. Were these minimalist altars a reflection of some spiritual abstraction, or a tradition rooted in even older pre-iconic cults? And then there is the question of Petra's sudden decline. By the 2nd century AD, the city was absorbed into the Roman Empire, trade routes shifted, and a series of devastating earthquakes combined with economic decline led to the city's gradual abandonment. By the 7th century, Petra had fallen silent. Its name faded from maps, its walls eroded in the wind. For centuries, it was known only through rumour and legend until 1812, when Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt, disguised as an Arab traveller, convinced a local guide to lead him to the lost city. What he saw shocked the Western world. Since then, excavations have slowly revealed Petra's scale and sophistication, but many of its deepest secrets remain untouched. Who were the original builders of the earlier structures? How far back does Petra truly go? Some believe the site may have been sacred long before the Nabatans arrived. Its location was chosen for reasons now lost to us, perhaps aligned with stars, seasonal changes, or other forgotten cosmologies. Others point to architectural anomalies, structures whose styles seem out of place, or engineering that seems unusually advanced for the time. Could Petra have preserved older knowledge passed down through centuries of desert migration? Fringe theories suggest Petra may have been part of a much larger sacred network, a stone circuit connecting the great sites of the ancient world. While such ideas remain unproven, they persist. Fed by the city's strange blend of the earthly and the eternal, Petra, after all, was not merely a city of the living, it was a city of the dead. Its grandest monuments are tombs, its most intricate carvings placed above empty doorways. It is a city built not to dominate the landscape, but to become one with it, to vanish into stone. And perhaps that is what the Nabateans intended. To build a place not just of commerce or power, but of meaning, hidden in plain sight. A message carved into the mountains, meant to endure beyond conquest, beyond memory. So what does Petra still have to tell us? Beneath its courtyards, behind its sealed tombs, in the excavated chambers and forgotten paths, what knowledge remains buried in red rock and silence? And as the sun dips low across its rose-red walls, casting long shadows across the sea, we are left to wonder, was Petra merely a city? or a question chiselled into stone waiting for us to answer. As we step away from the rose-red grandeur of Petra and the hidden power of the Nabatans, the road bends once more, this time eastward across the shimmering lowlands of Kustan in modern-day Iran. Here, amid harsh and unforgiving terrain, lie the scattered ruins of one of the most ancient civilizations in the Middle East. A culture older than Persia, older even than Babylon, a forgotten kingdom known as Elam. To the untrained eye, the site of Susa once, a great Elamite capital, appears deceptively simple. Dusty mounds, fractured columns, the remnants of long, collapsed walls. But look closer, and traces begin to emerge. Intricately fired bricks, cryptic inscriptions, fragments of temple complexes that hint at a civilization both foreign and foundational. The Elamites did not merely coexist with the Sumerians and Akkadians, they rivaled them, and yet they remain one of the least understood cultures of the ancient world. Their origins reach deep into the prehistoric past. As early as 3200 BC, the Elamites were building urban centres, establishing political hierarchies, and carving their own unique path, separate from yet intertwined with the civilizations of Mesopotamia to the west. But who were the Elamites? Their language, like that of the Sumerians, is a language isolate, unrelated to the Semitic or Indo-European families that would later dominate the region. Their script evolved independently, at first pictographic, then cuneiform form, and eventually a complex syllabic system. It was a language that resisted foreign influence for centuries, suggesting a cultural confidence that ran deep. Their capital cities, Anan, Awan, Susa, stood at the crossroads of trade and conquest. Their art shows a unique style, elongated figures, narrow eyes, tall fluted headdresses, and distinctive temple architecture. Unlike the rounded ziggurats of Sumer, Dolomite temples rose in flat platforms and multi-roomed sanctuaries. But for all their achievements, the Elamites often appear in the records of other civilizations as an enemy, a threat, a riddle. Babylonian and Assyrian inscriptions describe Dolomite kings raiding cities, capturing gods, and disappearing into the eastern mountains only to return a generation later, stronger and stranger than before. One of the most fascinating episodes in their history occurred around 1150 BC, when the Dolomite king Courtier Nahonte captured Babylon and carried off the statue of Marduk, the chief god of Mesopotamia. To the Babylonians, this was not just theft, it was a cosmic desecration. But the Elamites had their own gods, their own beliefs, and their own understanding of power. Their chief deity was Insushinak, the god of Susa, often represented by a horned cap and lightning-like symbols. His worship involved complex rituals and temple economies, yet little survives of the myths and stories that once surrounded him. What did the Elamites believe about creation, fate, or the afterlife? We do not know. Much of what remains of Dolomite culture comes from early sites and fragmentary inscriptions. No Elamite epic of Gilgamesh has ever been found. No complete historical narrative, only pieces. And yet the Elamites endured through waves of conquest. Ardean, Gutian, Babylonian, Assyrian, they maintained a distinct identity. They adapted, absorbed, and occasionally rose to dominate the very empires that sought to erase them. But then, sometime in the 6th century BC, they vanished. The rise of the Persian Achaemenid Empire under Cyrus the Great seems to have absorbed the Elamites completely. Their cities were repurposed, their language faded, and their gods forgotten. By the time Herodotus wrote of Persia's grandeur, Elilam was already a memory, its people assimilated, its voice silenced. Or was it? Some scholars argue that Elamite traditions survived longer than we realise, quietly influencing Persian administrative practices, royal iconography, and architectural forms. After all, Susa would go on to become one of the capitals of the Achaemenid Empire. Was this a coincidence or a continuation? And what theory is still debated that the Elamites may have originated far from where they ended? Some have speculated that they were part of an earlier wave of migration from Central Asia, or even the Indian subcontinent. Others have suggested they may have been remnants of an even older lost civilization that predated the Sumerians. Such ideas are difficult to prove, but the mystery of the Elamites persists because they do not quite fit. Their language stands alone, their religious practices are opaque, their art resists categorization, and their disappearance, like their arrival, is too quiet for comfort. Even their ruins seem to whisper rather than declare. Unlike the bold reliefs of Assyria or the monumental inscriptions of Egypt, the Elamites left their legacy buried beneath later empires written not in glory but in ambiguity. Why did they guard their culture so carefully? Why did they never fully merge with the Mesopotamian world despite centuries of contact and conflict? And most importantly, what else lies beneath the ruined temples of Susa, beneath the layers of Persian and Hellenistic stone? As new excavations continue in Iran, and as long-lost tablets emerge from museum storerooms and private collections, there remains the possibility that the Elamites have not yet finished speaking. Perhaps the story of Elam is not lost, but only sleeping, waiting for its next line to be read, its next fragment to be understood. And when that moment comes, will we finally hear the voice of the Mountain Kings, or only the echoes they left behind? From the lost cities of Elam, where kings once whispered to forgotten gods, we journey westward again to a city sacred to three faiths, layered in centuries of memory and devotion. Here, among the narrow streets of Old Jerusalem, stands a hill long regarded as the centre of divine encounter. Today, it is called the Temple Mount. But long ago, it was said to be the resting place of one of antiquity's most sacred structures, the Temple of Solomon. Its image has endured across millennia, not in ruins or inscriptions, but in scripture and imagination. A temple built not for man, but for God. Commissioned according to biblical accounts by King Solomon in the 10th century BC. It was designed to house the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest containing the tablets of the law, and to serve as the earthly dwelling place of Yahweh. But what do we truly know about this ancient temple, and did it ever exist as described? The Hebrew Bible offers precise and evocative details. According to the Book of Kings, the temple stood on top of Mount Moriah, its walls lined with cedar from Lebanon, its interior overlaid with gold. Two massive bronze pillars, Jachin and Boaz, flanked the entrance. A great inner sanctuary, the Holy of Holies, was accessible only to the high priest and only once a year. The dimensions are specific: 60 cubits long, 20 wide, 30 high. There were side chambers, an inner court, and elaborate fixtures, labours, altars, basins, all crafted with divine instruction. And yet, for all this detail, no definitive archaeological evidence of Solomon's temple has ever been uncovered. Why? One reason lies in the sensitivity of the location itself. The site of the first temple is traditionally believed to be where the Dome of the Rock now stands, one of Islam's holiest sites. Because of this, full-scale archaeological excavation on the Temple Mount has never been permitted. Much of what lies beneath remains untouched. Outside the mount, in surrounding areas, some intriguing finds have emerged. Phoenician-style inscriptions, remnants of monumental structures, and materials dated to the appropriate time period, but nothing yet that can be conclusively tied to Solomon's temple. Does this mean the temple never existed? Most scholars agree that a temple likely stood in Jerusalem during the 10th or 9th century BC, but whether it matched the grandeur described in the Bible remains a matter of debate. Some believe the biblical accounts may have been written or edited centuries later, possibly during or after the Babylonian exile, as a way to memorialize or reimagine a destroyed sanctuary. Others argue the descriptions are based on real memory preserved through oral tradition, perhaps influenced by Phoenician and Egyptian architecture, and only later stylized in sacred texts. And then there are the more speculative threads. Throughout history, the Temple of Solomon has inspired far more than religious devotion. It has captured the imagination of mystics, alchemists, secret societies, and esoteric thinkers. The Freemasons, for example, have long revered Solomon's temple as a symbol of sacred geometry, hidden wisdom, and divine order. Within their traditions, the temple represents more than a building. It is a blueprint of spiritual transformation. Could there have been something encoded in the original design, a set of cosmic principles, lost technologies? There are also theories, unsupported but persistent, that the Ark of the Covenant, once housed in Solomon's temple, contained an unknown form of energy or perhaps knowledge forbidden or forgotten. Some suggest the temple was designed not just as a place of worship, but as a resonant structure, channeling divine forces through its dimensions and materials. Mainstream archaeology, of course, remains cautious. The lack of physical remains makes these ideas difficult to test, and yet, the absence of evidence has never quelled the allure. Later the temple would be destroyed, first by the Babylonians in 586 BC. A second temple would rise in its place, eventually expanded by Herod the Great. It too would fall, this time to the Romans in 70 AD. Today, all that remains of either temple is the Western Wall, a place of prayer, pilgrimage, and enduring hope. But the first temple, the Temple of Solomon, remains somewhere between myth and memory. What truly stood at the top of the mountain in Solomon's time, a modest shrine, a Phoenician-inspired sanctuary, or a temple of gold and cedar glowing with sacred presence? Could traces still lie beneath the stone platforms under centuries of construction and devotion? Will we ever be able to peer beneath the dome of the rock, or must we rely forever on ancient texts, later reconstructions, and the shifting sands of tradition? For now, the Temple of Solomon remains an absence that speaks volumes. It exists not in stone, but in symbol, in scripture, in ritual, in imagination. A place where heaven and earth were said to meet. A house not just of worship, but of wonder. And as the light fades over Jerusalem's limestone rooftops, casting long shadows across the ancient city, one final question lingers in the warm evening air. What lies buried beneath the mount? A temple? A legend? Or something we have yet to even understand? As the memory of Solomon's temple fades into golden legend and sacred geometry, we move once more into the older, wilder landscape of early Mesopotamia. Before empires carved their names in stone, before Babylon rose, before even the Akkadians forged the first great state, there were others, nomadic, powerful, elusive. They were the Amorites. And though their names echo faintly in ancient tablets, the true story of the lost Amorite tribes remains a puzzle history has yet to solve. The Amorites first appear in the historical record around the end of the 3rd millennium BC. Their origin is placed somewhere to the west of Mesopotamia, in the semi-arid regions of what is now Syria. They were pastoralists, herders who lived in tents, moved with the seasons, and yet held immense influence over the great cities of their time. The Sumerians called them the Mu, the people from beyond the western deserts. They were often depicted as uncultured outsiders, bearded and nomadic, living outside the bounds of city walls and irrigation canals. And yet within a few centuries these desert tribes had not only entered Mesopotamia, they had taken it. By around 2000 BC, Amorite rulers sat on the thrones of many major cities: Ian, Larsa, Eshna, Mari, and most famously Babylon. Hammurabi, author of the world's most famous legal code, was himself an Amorite king. Under his rule, Babylon transformed from a modest settlement into a rising imperial power. The Amorites did not just conquer, they reshaped the political landscape of the region. But where did they come from, and why did they disappear? Unlike the Sumerians or Akkadians, the Amorites left few inscriptions of their own. Their language, believed to be a northwest Semitic tongue, was never fully written down. Instead, they adapted the Akkadian language and ununiform script already dominant in the cities they ruled. They left behind architecture, administrative systems and cultural shifts, but not a clear self-portrait. This has led some scholars to wonder, were the Amorites a single people or a loose confederation of tribes sharing a language and lifestyle? In Mari, on the banks of the Euphrates, archives from the royal palace reveal an intricate world of Amorite diplomacy, marriage alliances and intertribal networks. The kings of Mari corresponded with dozens of other rulers, many bearing Amorite names: Yadun Lim, Zimri, Shibu. These names suggest a sprawling network of noble lineages and shifting tribal loyalties. But even in these texts, the Amorites remain strangely amorphous, sometimes as kings, sometimes as raiders, sometimes as distant kin. It is as if they existed on the edge of every boundary, between city and desert, between foreigner and ruler, between past and future. Then, just as suddenly as they had risen, the Amorites vanished from the historical foreground. By the 16th century BC, references to them began to dwindle. Their political structures fragmented, new powers emerged: Kassites, Hittites, Assyrians. Amorite names disappear from royal lists. Their language, never fully recorded, fades from use, and their tribal identity, so prominent just centuries earlier, dissolves into the broader currents of Semitic history. What happened? Some historians suggest the Amorites were gradually absorbed, assimilated into the very cities they once ruled. Their culture, never rigidly defined, may have blended easily with the urban traditions of Mesopotamia. Others point to environmental shifts and political fragmentation that could have dispersed their tribal networks. But there are other, more speculative theories. Some suggest the Amorites may have migrated further westward after their fall, possibly contributing to the later cultural and linguistic landscape of the Levant. Were they distant ancestors of later Hebrew or Aramaic-speaking peoples? Could echoes of their tribal memory live on in stories passed down through ancient Near Eastern oral traditions? The Amorites also appear in the Hebrew Bible, where they are described as inhabitants of Canaan before the arrival of the Israelites. There they are depicted as powerful, sometimes giant-like figures, strong and tall as the cedars. Are these merely mythologized memories of a once great people, or distorted reflections of a real tribal confederation that had long since scattered? And then there are theories, unproven but persistent, that link the Amorites to lost civilizations or hidden knowledge. Their sudden rise, their deep integration into every major city-state, and their unexplained disappearance have drawn the attention of fringe historians. Could they have preserved a tradition now forgotten? Were they carriers of an earlier unseen wave of cultural memory? Of course, without inscriptions, without monuments, without a Rosetta Stone for their identity, such ideas remain in the realm of possibility, not probability. But the question endures for a people so central to the formation of Mesopotamian history. Why are the Amorites so hard to pin down? Why did they leave behind so little that speaks in their own voice? Perhaps the answer lies in their nature. Mobile, adaptable, in between. They were not builders of stone temples or sculptors of grand statues. They were movers of people, shapers of power, whisperers in tents and palace halls alike. And perhaps, like the desert wind they once rode across the Fertile Crescent, their legacy is not meant to be captured in clay, but felt across the vast spaces between what we know and what we've yet to uncover. Who were the Amorites really? And what traces of them still lie beneath the shifting sands, waiting to speak once more? Their story is not lost. It is simply unfinished. As the stories of the Amorites fade into the windswept hills of the Levant, we turn now to the deeper deserts of the Arabian Peninsula. Here, beneath endless waves of sand and searing heat, lie the scattered remains of cities that once thrived in an unforgiving land, flourishing hubs of trade, worship and power, now swallowed by silence. These are the vanished cities of Arabia, real, remembered, and yet still mysterious. The Arabian Peninsula is often imagined as a barren expanse, a place of nomads and sand. But hidden beneath its dunes are traces of a much older world, one of long-lost kingdoms, ancient caravan routes, and cities that defy the geography of their surroundings. Perhaps the most famous of these is Ubar, sometimes called the Atlantis of the Sands. For centuries it was spoken of in Bedouin legend and Islamic texts as a wealthy city destroyed by divine wrath. The Quran refers to it as I Am of the Pillars, a city of immense stature, the like of which was never built in the land. According to tradition, it was inhabited by the people of AD, who turned from righteousness and were buried beneath the sands as punishment. Was this only a myth? In the early 1990s, a NASA satellite using remote sensing detected ancient caravan routes converging in the Rub Alkali, the empty quarter, one of the most inhospitable regions on Earth. Following these trails, a team of archaeologists led by Nicholas Clapp and funded in part by NASA and the Sultan of Oman uncovered the ruins of a collapsed limestone fortress at a place called Shusur. Some believe this might be the legendary Ubar. Stone foundations, collapsed towers, and pottery shards dated to pre-Islamic times seem to confirm the presence of a once significant settlement. But was it Ubar, or merely an outpost along a greater route? Mainstream scholars remain cautious. The site was certainly important, a nexus for the trade of frankincense, which once flowed northward from the Dar region to Mesopotamia and the Levant. But whether it was the same city described in religious and oral texts is still debated. Ubar, if it existed as legend claims, has yet to be fully found. Or perhaps, like so many ancient stories, its memory is a mosaic, part truth, part exaggeration, part metaphor for a deeper loss, and Ubar is not alone. Across the southern and western Arabian Peninsula, other ancient cities once flourished, cities whose ruins now lie half buried in desert wind. In modern-day Saudi Arabia, the site of Alpha once served as the capital of the Kingdom of Kinda, a powerful tribal state that rose in the 1st centuries BC. Alpha is remarkably preserved. Streets, temples, wells and tombs carved with inscriptions in ancient South Arabian scripts. It was a city of poetry and trade, blending northern Semitic culture with the older traditions of southern Arabia. Why did it fall into ruin? Some believe shifts in trade routes and climate led to its abandonment. Others point to internal strife or the rise of Islam, which reshaped the political and spiritual landscape of the region. To the west, near Alula, the site of Dan, capital of the Danite, and later the Leonite kingdoms, offers another glimpse into Arabia's hidden past. Here, monumental tombs carved into sandstone cliffs resemble those of nearby Madin Sali, ancient Hegra, a Nabatean city that rivals Petra in both scale and splendour. These cities carved with precision and reverence stood at the crossroads of incense, spice and pilgrimage routes. Yet, by the time Roman records speak of Arabia, many were already fading. In Yemen, the ancient cities of Marib, Shabwa and Timna once formed the heart of the Sibayan and Kadabanian kingdoms, cultures that built towering dams, astronomical temples and thriving ports. The Marib Dam, an engineering marvel thousands of years old, once sustained vast agricultural systems. Its collapse, perhaps triggered by floods or neglect, is cited in both legend and historical theory as a cause for the dispersal of once powerful peoples, and yet so much remains unknown. Why do so many cities across the Arabian Peninsula seem to rise to greatness only to vanish, leaving behind fragments with few clear narratives? Was it the climate, the unforgiving environment, shifting trade patterns that dried up the lifeblood of these oases, or was something else at play? Some researchers propose a pattern, cyclical rise and fall tied to the long arc of climate change in the region, the Arabian. The peninsula was once greener, wetter, dotted with rivers and grasslands. Rock art and archaeological finds suggest a different landscape thousands of years ago. Could these vanished cities have been built during brief windows of abundance only to fall when the rains withdrew? Others look to myth and wonder whether stories like that of Iran reflects not just punishment, but memory. Folk recollections of natural disasters, collapses, or even advanced knowledge lost to time. Fringe theories even suggest the possibility of pre-Islamic Arabian civilizations, more complex than we currently understand. Cultures that use now lost techniques to harness water, store knowledge, and build cities able to withstand the desert's wrath. Could some of these cities still lie hidden beneath the sands, beyond the reach of satellite scans and surface surveys? Today, technology continues to reveal clues. Remote sensing, drone photography, and ground-penetrating radar have begun to map ancient roads and ruins across the region. Yet access remains difficult. Political borders, desert conditions, and conservation concerns make large-scale excavation a challenge. Still, the sands shift, and with each grain that moves, the past becomes a little clearer. Were the cities of ancient Arabia truly lost, or have we simply forgotten how to see them? And as the desert winds sweep across the empty quarter, smoothing dunes, hiding walls and erasing paths, we are left to ask, what cities once stood here beneath these shifting sands? What voices once echoed through these vanished streets? And what will we find when the desert decides to give them back? As the sands of Arabia bury their cities and silence their roads, we move northward again into the fertile plains of western Syria, where something extraordinary was once pulled from the earth. Not a temple or tomb, but a library, not legends, but language itself. At a site long thought to be provincial, archaeologists uncovered a cache of clay that would unsettle everything we thought we knew about early history. This is the mystery of the Ebla tablets, one of the most astonishing and still puzzling archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. The year was 1974. Italian archaeologist Paolo Matti, excavating a mound near the modern village of Tel Mardik, came upon the ruins of an ancient city. Stone foundations, broken statues, and finally a palace, grand and sprawling, dated to the 3rd millennium BC. Within it, a room unlike any other, the remains of wooden shelves scorched by fire and hundreds of clay tablets hardened by that same destruction. More would follow. Over the next few seasons, nearly 18,000 tablets and fragments would be uncovered. These were not the random scribbles of a fallen city. They were records meticulously inscribed in punctiform, written in a previously unknown Semitic language that scholars soon named Eblat. The city of Ebar, it turned out, was not a backwater. It had been a major power around 2400 BC, rivaling the likes of Mari and even earlier Akkad. But what startled researchers most was the content of the tablets. Administrative texts detailed trade routes, taxation, diplomatic correspondence, legal decisions and inventories of goods. Names of cities, rulers and deities filled the lines. Ela was revealed as a bureaucratic powerhouse managing an empire that stretched from the Mediterranean to Mesopotamia. It had treaties with distant kingdoms, extensive commercial networks, and a sophisticated economy. But it also had something else: memory. Some tablets appeared to contain early literary texts, rituals, and even linguistic dictionaries. Bilingual lists, Elate and Sumerian, suggested a deliberate effort to translate and preserve language. This raised profound questions. Had Ebla been a cultural bridge between Sumer to the southeast and the Semitic west? Could this city, once forgotten, have played a central role in shaping the development of the ancient Near East? Even more controversial were the names. Several tablets listed familiar biblical cities: Salem, Sodom, Gomorrah, Hazor, Lesish, Gaza. Names that appeared more than 1,000 years later in Hebrew scripture. Were these coincidences or proof that these cities existed long before biblical tradition dated them? Some early reports even claim the name Abraham appeared in the tablets, though these claims have since been debated and largely set aside by mainstream scholars. Still, the notion that the Ebla archives might contain echoes, however faint, of stories long thought to be mythological, sent shockwaves through both scholarly and religious communities. What followed was a flurry of excitement, speculation, and controversy. Linguists debated the structure and origin of Elate. Historians questioned how such a powerful kingdom could have remained hidden for so long. Religious commentators examined the implications for biblical chronology. And yet, as with so many discoveries of this magnitude, clarity proved elusive. Ebla's first destruction around 2300 BC appears to have come at the hands of Sargon of Akkad, or his grandson Naram-Sin themselves, near mythic figures in Mesopotamian history. The city was later rebuilt, but its prominence never returned to the same level. Over time, it faded from memory, its tablets buried beneath the same dust that preserved them. But questions remain. Why was Ebla's language so distinct yet so sophisticated? Where did its scribal traditions originate? And why are so many of its cultural and political links still difficult to place? One theory suggests that Ebla was part of a broader, now mostly lost Semitic civilization that predated and perhaps influenced the better-known empires to its south and east. Another positives reflect an elite tradition of knowledge collection, perhaps deliberately preserving names and places from earlier oral traditions. Then there are the mysteries within the texts themselves. Many tablets are still untranslated, others are fragmented, open to interpretation. Some contain references to unknown deities or rituals with no parallel in surrounding cultures. Were these homegrown traditions or relics of even older beliefs passed down in secret? Fringe theories, as always, have emerged, suggesting the Ela tablets reveal lost histories, encoded wisdom, or connections to civilizations that have not yet been discovered. These claims remain speculative, but they reflect a deeper truth. The discovery at Ebla reopened the story of the ancient Near East, introducing a powerful actor we hadn't even known was missing. And still, the site itself, Tel Mardik, is only partially excavated. War and instability in the region have slowed progress. Many tablets remain unstudied, housed in Syrian archives and museums, awaiting a time when scholars can safely resume their work. What more might they reveal? Ebla was a city of record-keepers, scribes and traders, priests and kings. It knew the weight of words, it understood the importance of names, and though its buildings have fallen, its voice still speaks quietly from broken clay. Did the people of Ela know their writings would one day be unearthed and puzzled over by a distant future? Or were they simply recording what mattered, unaware that the very act of writing would preserve them for 4,000 years? And as we wait for more of Abel's secrets to come to light, one question lingers beneath the ashen silence. What stories still lie unread in the tablets of stone, and how might they change the way we remember the ancient world? As the last words of the Ebel tablets echo across millennia, etched in clay and shadow, we journey once more into the land of Sumer, southward now to the banks of the Euphrates, to a place where death was not an end, but a stage where the line between reverence and terror blurs beneath layers of gold, sacrifice, and silence. This is the city of Air, and within it lies some of the most haunting graves ever unearthed. The royal tombs of a mystery that many believe is touched by something far older and far darker than simple history. Discovered in the 1920s by Sir Leonard Woolley during one of the great archaeological excavations of the modern era, the Royal Cemetery of Air held over 2,000 graves, but it was a subset of just 16 that drew the world's gaze. These were no ordinary burials. They were palatial in scale, dazzling in material, and deeply unsettling in content. In one tomb, a Queen Huabi was found buried beneath a headdress of gold leaves, lapis lazuli beads, and carnelian chains. Her burial chamber had not collapsed or eroded with time. It had been carefully sealed, preserved, as though someone or something intended it to last. But it was not only the grave goods that captured attention, it was the bodies. Dozens of attendants, mostly women, were found alongside the royals, arranged in neat rows adorned with jewellery, weapons, and musical instruments. Some lay with golden lyres, others held goblets near their lips. There was no sign of violence, no trauma, no struggle. Had they died willingly? Were they drugged, ritually slain, or buried alive? Woolley believed these were sacrificial burials, servants interred to accompany their rulers into the afterlife. He suggested a ceremonial drink or narcotic may have been used, a kind of solemn submission to royal death, but the quiet perfection of their poses, serene, undisturbed, left many uneasy. Was this devotion, or something more sinister? The tombs dating to around 2500 BC belong to the early dynastic period when Sumerian city-states were rising in power and myth was still close to memory. The Sumerians believed in a complex afterlife bleak yet filled with ritual significance. But even within that context, the royal tombs stand apart. Why such extravagance? Why such precision in death? And then came the accidents. Shortly after the excavation and shipment of artefacts to the British Museum and University of Pennsylvania, reports began to circulate quietly at first of strange happenings. Researchers falling ill, sudden deaths, unexplained misfortunes affecting those closely tied to the tombs. Sir Leonard Woolley himself dismissed these stories. He was a meticulous scholar grounded in rationalism. But among local workers and some Western observers, the whispers persisted. Had something been disturbed that was meant to remain sealed? Some pointed to a seal impression found at the site bearing an inscription that was loosely translated as a warning, not unlike the more famous curse on Tutankhamun's tomb. Others noted that Queen Puabi's burial goods included protective amulets and inscriptions invoking underworld deities such as Arishkal, goddess of the dead. Were the tombs protected? Not just symbolically, but metaphysically. While most mainstream historians reject the idea of a literal curse, the allure of the idea endures. Stories of curses touch on a deeper truth that many ancient cultures did believe in such protections, that the line between the sacred and the forbidden was thin, and crossing it came with consequences. But perhaps the real mystery of royal tombs is not supernatural but human. What social force compelled a society to orchestrate mass ritual burials with such consistency and care? What kind of authority did these royals wield that so many would die for them not just once, but again and again? Was it divine kingship, religious ecstasy, or fear so deeply embedded in tradition that it felt like devotion? And why are these burials so unique in the archaeological record? Though other examples of human sacrifice exist in the ancient world from Egypt to China to Mesoamerica, few match the eerie composure, the haunting serenity of the tombs here. Death was staged like theatre. Every detail, every adornment, every alignment seemed designed not only to honour the dead, but to send a message. But to whom? To the gods above? To the dead below? Or to us centuries later staring into the still faces of those who died in silence? Today the artefacts from the royal tombs sit behind glass golden lyres with bulls' heads, elaborate headdresses, beaded cloaks of shell and lapis lazuli. Queen Puabi's skull has been reconstructed. Her face is digitally modelled, but the real mystery lies in what we cannot see, in what was lost, sealed, or never meant to be understood. It itself is a ruin. Its ziggurat rises above the flat plains of Iraq, weathered by war and time. Yet below it, in the deep-cut tomb pits once cleared by Woolley's team, the echoes remain. Was the curse of the tombs ever real? Or is the real curse the knowledge that we will never fully understand what drove a people to bury their dead in such terrifying beauty? What hidden beliefs, fears, and hopes lay beneath the gold? And as we reflect on the stillness of those long-dead attendants draped in jewels, lips forever closed, we're left to ask, who were they? And what did they see in their final moment as the stones were laid and the world above fell away? As the silent tombs of Ur whisper their secrets from beneath the dust, we journey northward once again toward the legendary city of Babylon, a place of empire, language, and myth. A city once considered the navel of the world, guarded by one of the most magnificent gateways ever built. Rising from the baked plains of Mesopotamia in deep glazed blues and gold, it stood like a threshold to another realm. This is the Ishtar Gate, a marvel of ancient craftsmanship and a riddle still waiting to be fully understood. Imagine approaching it in its prime, massive, imposing, dazzling in the sun. Rows of bulls and dragons, orcs and mushu march across its surface in perfect symmetry. Each glazed brick fired with precision, each creature outlined in relief as if alive. The gateway led into the processional way, the sacred avenue of Babylon flanked by walls equally ornate, stretching hundreds of meters toward the heart of the city. Commissioned by King Nebuchadnezzar II around 575 BC. The Ishtar Gate was dedicated to the goddess Ishtar, deity of love, war, and fertility. It was not just an entry point, it was a statement, a declaration of Babylon's wealth, order, and divine favour. But what truly was its purpose? At first glance, the Ishtar Gate appears ceremonial. It functioned as part of the New Year festival, where statues of gods were paraded through the processional way, symbolically renewing the cosmos and affirming royal legitimacy. Babylon's citizens would gather, priests would chant, and sacred images would pass beneath the watchful gaze of the animals carved into the gate's walls. But was there more to it than ritual and splendour? The animals themselves raise questions. The oryx, wild bulls, represent Adad, god of storms. The mushu, a serpentine dragon with lion's forelegs and eagle's talons, is linked to Marduk, Babylon's chief deity. Ishtar, to whom the gate is dedicated, is typically associated with lions. Yet no lions adorn the gate itself, only the sidewalls along the processional way. Why this deviation? Was the gate named for Ishtar but dominated by the symbols of other gods? Was it a subtle message, an encoded theology, a political statement, or even a cosmic map? Some scholars suggest that the Ishtar Gate was not just symbolic but metaphysical. A threshold not only between the mundane and the sacred but between realms, a liminal space where mortals passed under the gaze of divine guardians. The repetition of animals in strict patterns may have had an apotropaic purpose designed to repel evil, to shield the city from unseen forces, or to focus spiritual energy inward. Could the gate have served as a kind of architectural invocation, a permanent prayer cast in brick and fire? Others have explored the idea that the Ishtar Gate embodied sacred geometry, that its proportions, orientations, and decorative sequences mirrored celestial events, or encoded Babylonian cosmology. The ancient Mesopotamians were accomplished astronomers. They tracked the stars, mapped the heavens, and assigned gods to planets. Babylon itself was said to be built according to heavenly patterns. Was the gate aligned to reflect the rising of Venus, Ishtar's celestial embodiment, or did it point to something else entirely? There are also those who argue that the gate functioned as a political message cloaked in divine imagery. The might of Babylon was inseparable from the will of its gods. By passing through the gate, foreign envoys and local citizens alike were reminded not only of the city's splendour, but of its sacred authority. The gate may have been as much about control as it was about ceremony, a visual assertion that Babylon was not merely a city, it was ordained. Then there are the mysteries surrounding the gate's survival. The original structure was dismantled by time and conquest, but its remnants were uncovered in the early 20th century by German archaeologist Robert Coldway. Massive crates of glazed bricks were transported to Berlin, where they were painstakingly reconstructed. Today, the Ishtar Gate stands in the Pergamon Museum, its luminous colours preserved, its mythic animals staring out across an entirely foreign land. But what remains in Babylon itself? Beneath the surface, beneath layers of ancient earth and modern interference, more pieces of the processional way remain. Unearthed fragments suggest the existence of deeper foundations, possibly indicating earlier phases of the gate or now vanished ceremonial structures. Satellite surveys hint at buried architecture yet untouched by excavation. What else might be hidden beneath the soil of Babylon? Could earlier versions of the gate have existed, built for different gods, aligned to older cosmologies, carrying messages now lost? Could the gate's true function have extended beyond the New Year festival, serving instead as an interface between power, theology, and something more elusive, the sacred mechanics of the world? Mainstream interpretations remain cautious. They point to ritual, politics, and aesthetics. But the Ishtar Gate resists easy categorization. Its beauty is matched by its ambiguity. What we do know is this: Babylon was not a city built randomly. It was meticulously planned, its temples and towers arranged with precision. The Ishtar Gate, rising as it did at a key junction between the outer world and the heart of sacred space, was never merely decorative. It was deliberate, a symbol, a threshold, perhaps even a warning. And as we stand before its reconstructed form, gazing into the eyes of its composite beasts, we are left with the same question ancient visitors may have asked, standing before the original. What lies beyond this gate? A city, a temple, or a design older than Babylon itself, carved not only into brick but into the fabric of belief? As we pass through the gleaming threshold of the Ishtar Gate, where lions roar in blue stone and dragons coil in silence, we leave behind the known and enter a realm where the unseen was once believed to shape the living world. Beyond monuments, beyond kings and empires, the ancient peoples of the Middle East whispered of other forces, elusive, unbound, neither divine nor mortal. These were the Jinn, beings older than myth, flickering at the edge of fire and wind, and their role in pre-Islamic mythology remains one of the region's most enduring and enigmatic mysteries. Imagine the ancient Arabian night. The desert stretches endlessly, starlit and hushed. A caravan halts at a remote oasis. The fire crackles low, and as the wind stirs the sand, the elders speak. Of places not to be travelled, of wells that whisper, of stones that bleed in caves where voices echo back with answers not quite human. They speak of jinn. Before Islam formalised their image into the spiritual beings known today, the jinn in Arabic, inhabited a wide spectrum of ancient Middle Eastern belief. In the tribal societies of the Arabian Peninsula, jinn were not evil per se, nor were they gods. They were something else. Spirits of place, keepers of forgotten paths, beings of flame and air, unpredictable and deeply woven into the rhythms of desert life. But how far back do they go? Some scholars trace their origins to Proto-Arabic animism, where natural elements were inhabited by conscious unseen forces. Rocks, trees, the wind itself, all could be vessels. Early inscriptions, particularly South Arabian and Nabatean texts from the 1st millennium BC, reference supernatural beings distinct from gods. Some of these may be precursors to what would later be called jinn. Others suggest that the jinn concept absorbed elements from older Mesopotamian and Persian beliefs. In the mythologies of Sumema and Akkad, Utuku and Adimu were spirits of the dead, restless, invisible, often tied to specific locations or actions. The wind demons of Assyria, like Pazuzu, combined protective and malevolent traits. Persian tradition too speaks of dives, beings of great power, sometimes aligned with chaos. Could the jinn be a cultural evolution of these older spirits filtered through oral tradition and shaped by desert isolation? In the pre-Islamic poetry of the Jahiliyyah, the Age of Ignorance, the jinn appears frequently. Poets claimed inspiration from them, calling upon a Karen, a spirit companion. Certain boulders or hills were considered in haunted places where voices could be heard and strange phenomena observed. Some tribes offered small sacrifices at such sites. Not worship exactly, but appeasement. Interestingly, the jinn were not always malevolent. They could teach, they could heal. Some were believed to protect entire clans. Others deceived travellers, led men astray, or stole livestock. But always they were unpredictable, operating outside the bounds of human morality. Were they merely metaphors, personifications of natural danger and unpredictability? Or did people genuinely encounter something? There are accounts, not ancient, but recent enough to echo the old beliefs of flickering lights in the desert, untraceable voices in remote canyons, inexplicable illness or good fortune tied to forgotten places. In parts of southern Arabia, small stone enclosures still dot the landscape known locally as jinn houses. Who built them and why? As Islam emerged in the 7th century AD, it did not erase the jinn. Instead, it reframed them. The Quran confirms their existence, describes them as beings created from smokeless fire, invisible to humans, and subject to divine law. Some embraced Islam, others rejected it. Like humans, they had free will. Surahs such as Al-Jinn and Al-Rahman describe their capacity to listen, to speak, and to choose. But long before this theological framework, the jinn already haunted the mountains and valleys of the Middle East. And what of the archaeological record? While spirits leave no bones to unearth, clues linger in iconography and inscriptions. Strange petroglyphs found in the basalt deserts of northern Arabia depict hybrid creatures, part man, part animal, part shadow. Were these depictions of tribal gods, shamans, or visions of jinn seen in trance, fear, or dream? Some ancient tombs, particularly in the Hadramut region of Yemen, are constructed with entrances intentionally misaligned with human pathways, said to confuse jinn and prevent disturbance of the dead. In these same regions, certain rock formations are still approached with quiet reverence. Could these practices encode a forgotten dialogue between humans and unseen forces? Cultural memories of encounters that shaped landscapes as much as architecture. And then there are the tales that slip through the cracks of recorded history. The story of the city of brass said to be built by jinn and lost in the desert, or the tale of Sullen or Solomon who commanded the jinn with a ring and forced them to build monuments of stone. These stories, while coloured by later Islamic tradition, likely echo older beliefs, preserved, reshaped, but never entirely extinguished. Why do these figures endure? Perhaps the jinn represents more than fear or fantasy. Perhaps they are the vessel through which early cultures confronted what they could not control. Sandstorms, illness, madness, inspiration. They are the mirror of the unknown. But are they only reflections? Even today, among certain communities in the Middle East, belief in jinn persists not just as superstition, but as something more visceral, something felt, something passed down. Not in books, but in glances, in unspoken rules, in silence when certain names are spoken. So what were the jinn truly? Echoes of ancient animism, remnants of older mythological systems, or something else entirely, something that still flickers just beyond the reach of language, born in the silence of the desert night? Perhaps the real mystery is not whether they existed, but why we still hesitate to dismiss them. As the desert winds quiet and the whispers of jinn fade into the night, our gaze lifts toward the stars. For the ancient peoples of the Middle East, the sky was not empty. It was alive with meaning, woven with omens, cycles, and messages from the divine. And nowhere was this celestial language more carefully recorded than in the clay of ancient Babylon. These are the Babylonian astronomical tablets, a body of work that continues to astonish scholars and challenge assumptions about what early civilizations knew and how they knew it. Baked in low-fired clay and etched with wedge-shaped punctiform, these tablets seem unremarkable at first glance, dusty remnants of scroll bureaucracy, and yet within their markings lies a vision of the cosmos that is both mathematically precise and deeply spiritual. Discovered primarily in the ruins of Babylon, Uruk, and Nineveh, these tablets date from around 750 BC to 50 BC, but they represent knowledge far older, passed down and refined over centuries. Many were found in temple complexes or palace libraries, especially in the famous library of Ashurbanipal at Nineveh. The most striking aspect, these were not mere observations, they were predictions. Babylonian astronomers tracked the motions of the moon, planets and stars with remarkable accuracy. They identified eclipses, calculated synodic cycles, and developed systems to predict celestial events months, sometimes years in advance. They even recognized the Sorrow cycle, the 18-year pattern used to forecast eclipses over 1,000 years before modern European science rediscovered it. But how? Unlike the later Greeks who used geometric models to represent the cosmos, the Babylonians employed a method based on arithmetic progressions, stepwise calculations tracking velocity and periodicity. Some of the tablets even demonstrate abstract mathematical thinking, graphs, time-distance equations, and a grasp of nonlinear change. One set of tablets from Babylon shows that by the 4th century BC, Babylonian scholars had calculated the area under a velocity time curve, a concept not formalized in the West until the development of calculus over 2 millennia later. How could a society without telescopes or modern instruments achieve this level of precision? Their tools were simple: keen eyes, water clocks, and generations of continuous observation. The sky was their laboratory. Night after night, year after year, scribes would mark down the rising of Venus, the retrograde motion of Mars, the disappearance of the moon. Over time, patterns emerged, cycles became codified, and from this data came order, a cosmic calendar tied to kingship, ritual, and fate. But the astronomical tablets were more than scientific instruments. They were portals between heaven and earth. For the Babylonians, the sky was a divine text, each star a word, each eclipse a sentence. The planets were gods in motion. Marduk as Jupiter, Ishtar as Venus, Nergal as Mars. Celestial alignments foretold war, famine or prosperity. Astrologers known as Tupsha Enuma Anu Enlil served at court advising rulers based on the language of the stars. One of the most famous collections, the series Enuma Anu Enlil, spans 70 tablets and contains thousands of omens. If the moon is surrounded by a halo and Jupiter stands within it, one passage reads, "The king will live happily." Another, "If Venus disappears in the west for 3 days and reappears in the east, a foreign army will attack." Were these superstitions, or was there something more systematic, more empirical beneath the ritual language? Modern researchers have begun to re-examine these texts not just as mythological curiosities, but as early examples of data science, a culture that merged observation and interpretation, symbolic thought and numerical rigor. Could this hybrid mindset, the spiritual and the analytical, be what allowed them to access patterns others overlooked? There are other puzzles. Some tablets appear to encode knowledge that on the surface seems anachronistic. One controversial claim suggests that Babylonian scribes calculated planetary periods accurately, to within fractions of a day despite lacking optical tools. Others point to references in Hellenistic-era tablets that may hint at heliocentric reasoning that some Babylonian astronomers may have speculated that the Earth was not stationary. Though these ideas remain debated, they challenge the long-standing assumption that Babylonian astronomy was merely primitive. On the contrary, it may have been foundational, the root system beneath later Greek, Islamic and European sciences. And then there are the tablets we haven't translated. Thousands remain unread, untranslated, or still buried beneath the ruins of Mesopotamian cities. Some sit in museum vaults, mislabeled or forgotten. Others were lost to looting or destroyed by conflict. What insights have we missed? What celestial knowledge remains locked in clay, waiting for someone to see it, not just as history, but as a message? A few researchers have even speculated that Babylonian astronomy might preserve echoes of an even older tradition. Presumerian stargazers whose observations were absorbed into early myth, the alignment of ziggurats, the orientation of city grids, the sacred numbers that recur in uniform. Are these the fingerprints of a forgotten science? Of course, such claims are difficult to prove, but they remind us that much of what we call ancient was in its time cutting edge. Today, a few of these tablets are on display in major museums: the British Museum in London, the Louvre in Paris. Visitors walk past them without knowing they contain some of the earliest attempts to grasp the universe, not through myth alone, but through measurement. The Babylonians looked up and saw more than stars. They saw structure. They believed the cosmos was intelligible and that with enough patience it would speak. And as we consider their fragile tablets, lines pressed by hand, stored in libraries long since turned to dust, we are left to wonder, what did they know that we've forgotten? And what remains written in the stars just waiting to be read again? As the last stargazers of Babylon etched the heavens onto clay far to the northwest, another great civilization was fading, not with a sudden collapse, but like a torch quietly extinguished by wind. High on the Anatolian plateau, nestled between mountains and guarded by stone lions, stood the city of Hattusa, capital of the Hittite Empire. For centuries, it was a power to rival Egypt and Assyria. Then, inexplicably, it vanished, and the silence that followed has never been fully explained. Hattusa was once the heart of an empire. Massive walls encircled the city, pierced by ceremonial gates. The Lion Gate, the King's Gate, the Sphinx Gate, each adorned with sculptures that seemed less ornamental than watchful. Inside, temples and royal archives flourished, filled with thousands of ununiform tablets written in Hittite, Akkadian and Huran. This was no isolated kingdom. It was a diplomatic heavyweight, signing treaties, waging wars and corresponding with pharaohs. By the 14th century BC, the Hittites controlled vast territories from western Anatolia to northern Syria. They fought Egypt to a standstill at the famous Battle of Kadesh, one of the earliest conflicts in recorded history to end with a formal peace treaty. Their kings bore titles like Great King and invoked the storm god Teshub, whose emblem was the double-headed eagle, powerful, omnipresent and eternal. And yet within a generation they were gone. Around 1200 BC, the Hittite Empire dissolved. Hattusa was abandoned, palaces burned, temples emptied, and the royal line, once so carefully preserved, vanished without a trace. No single battle is recorded, no enemy is named. The archives fall silent, the empire disappears from history. What happened? Mainstream historians offer several theories. One points to the so-called Late Bronze Age collapse, a wave of destruction and disruption that struck the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BC. Cities from Ugarate to Mycenae fell, trade networks disintegrated, and population centres were abandoned. The Hittites may have been swept up in this broader regional catastrophe. Environmental evidence suggests that drought and famine may have played a key role. Paleoclimate studies show a period of arid conditions across Anatolia and the Levant during this time. Hittite texts from the final decades of the empire refer to grain shortages and requests for food aid. If the harvest failed, if trade routes were disrupted, internal stability could have crumbled. Compounding this, there is mention of internal rebellion. Letters from neighbouring states hint at vassals turning against their Hittite overlords. Could the empire have been undone from within? Then there are the Sea Peoples, a mysterious confederation of maritime raiders who appear in Egyptian records as bringing chaos to the coasts of the Levant and Anatolia. Some scholars believe these invaders may have targeted Hittite territory, accelerating its collapse. Others cautioned that the Sea Peoples were more a symptom than a cause, a mobile wave of displaced groups set into motion by systemic failure. But even if all of these factors were involved, the mystery remains. Why was Hattusa not rebuilt? Why did the Hittite royal lineage disappear completely without legend, without a successor dynasty? Some point to the structure of Hittite society. The empire was highly centralized, with authority focused around the great king and the capital. When the center fell, the periphery may have had no means or will to sustain it. Fragmentation followed. In the centuries after, smaller Neo-Hittite states would arise in southeastern Anatolia and northern Syria, but they were never again a unified force. And then there are stranger questions. In the final decades of the empire, some Hittite inscriptions grew more desperate, more mystical. Ritual texts invoke divine protection. Oracles are consulted with increasing urgency. Was the empire already spiritually unravelling, seeking answers not from strategy, but from prophecy? What role did religion play in the decline? The Hittites had an unusually inclusive pantheon, absorbing the gods of their neighbours, compiling exhaustive ritual texts, and allowing local cults to flourish. Was this theological flexibility a strength, or a liability when the empire faced existential crisis? Archaeologists working at Hattusa have uncovered evidence of controlled demolition in parts of the city. Certain areas appear to have been intentionally abandoned and ritually closed. Fires burned, but not indiscriminately, almost as though a retreat, not a rout, had taken place. Did the Hittites anticipate the end? Some researchers have speculated that the final rulers of Hattusa may have chosen to dismantle their own city, removing sacred objects, dispersing royal archives, and disappearing into the landscape. Could the heirs of the Hittite court have survived in secret, giving rise to oral traditions that would later be folded into local mythologies? And what of the archives? Despite the thousands of tablets recovered from Hattusa, there are hints that much more remains undiscovered. Entire wings of the palace complex lie unexcavated. In other sites like Sapinus and Kilipe, new caches of texts continue to emerge. Could a lost tablet yet name the final king? Could a ritual text or letter explain the silence? Or is the silence itself the explanation? Perhaps the fall of the Hittites was not sudden, but slow, masked by a system too complex to adapt. Perhaps it was not marked by war, but by the quiet erosion of food, trust and belief. Or perhaps the storm god they worshipped turned his face away, and the empire that bore his symbol faded like a breath in the Anatolian wind. Today, the great gates of Hattusa stand empty. The walls remain, but the voices have long since gone. Lions carved in stone still guard the thresholds, but they do not speak. And so we ask, did the Hittites vanish by chance or by choice? And what echoes of their lost empire still lie hidden beneath the hills of central Anatolia, waiting to answer? From the silent stones of Hattusa, where lions still stand guard over empty streets, our journey traces the great river routes down the Euphrates toward the west to the ancient city of Mari. Situated on a high mound at the bend of the river, Mari was once the beating heart of diplomacy and intrigue in the 2nd millennium BC. Beneath its ruined palace, an archive of clay tablets lay undisturbed for nearly 4 millennia, waiting to reveal stories of kings, envoys and secrets too delicate for stone. These are the Mari letters, a collection whose discovery opened a window onto a vanished world and whose mysteries have yet to be fully unravelled. Imagine standing on the edge of the Tale of Mari, its slopes littered with fragments of mud brick. The walls of chamber after chamber are half eroded by wind and water. In the 1930s, French archaeologists began to dig, uncovering the great palace of Zim, king of Mari in the early 18th century BC. At first, they found ornamental fans, intricate ovaries, and finely painted frescoes. Then in a vetted room marked by scorched walls, they encountered a trove of over 20,000 clay tablets, letters, administrative records, and ritual texts written in Akkadian form. These letters were the lifeblood of an empire. They carried dispatches to Egypt and Assyria, petitions from governorships on the Jebel Bishri to the south, and reports from distant vessels across northern Mesopotamia. They spoke of grain shipments, marriage alliances, border disputes, and the daily rhythms of palace life. Some letters crackle with urgency, warnings of Aramean raids, pleas for military aid, even descriptions of mysterious phenomena observed in the sky or river. Yet for all their detail, the Mari letters pose as many questions as they answer. One of the most puzzling is the so-called letter to the gods. Unlike the standard diplomatic missives, this tablet appears to record a ritual message addressed not to kings or governors, but to divine powers. Written on a fine polished clay, it invokes a host of deities, Ishtar of Nineveh, Dagon of Turka, Hadad of Aleppo, and request protection against an unspecified calamity. Was this a routine, invocation, or evidence of an impending crisis that never found its way into the royal chronicles? Then there are the references to far-flung lands rarely mentioned elsewhere. One envoy writes of travelling by camel caravan to a place called Tilman, trading Mari's silver for copper and pearls. Is Tilman a local name for Dilmun, the island kingdom of Bahrain we explored earlier? If so, it suggests a maritime network stretching from the Gulf all the way to the Euphrates, centuries before similar routes are documented. Even more enigmatic are the letters that hint at secret societies within the palace itself. A cautious scribe warns a fellow official in veiled language, "Beware the council at midnight. Their masks bear the sign of Shamash, but their words speak of new alliances." Who were these masked figures? A faction of court priests? A clandestine mercenary guild? Or is this a metaphor reworked by later scribes for a political betrayal now lost to time? Scholars have debated whether such letters reflect genuine espionage, or are literary exercises dramatising tensions within Mari's bureaucracy. Without additional corroboration, the lines between history and fiction blur. Another layer of mystery surrounds the physical tablets themselves. Many were buried in what appears to have been a hasty sealing, as though the palace archive were locked away in crisis. Some tablets show signs of fire damage, others are carefully wrapped in clay envelopes stamped with royal seals. Why this mixture? Did Mari's final rulers anticipate invasion and attempt to preserve their records? Or did they ritually purify certain documents by burning, then safeguarding the remainder for posterity? The fate of Mari offers a clue. Around 1760 BC, the city fell to Hammurabi of Babylon. The palace was sacked, its walls scorched, but the archive survived, buried under wreckage. Were the letters preserved by accident or by design? And what might lie in adjoining rooms still unexcavated? records that could rewrite Mari's final days. Even after decades of study, some linguistic puzzles remain unresolved. The Akkadian of the Mari letters shows dialectal features distinct from Babylon and Assyria, subtle variations in verb forms, unique technical terms for riverine trade, and personal names unlike those found elsewhere. Were these simply regional quirks or hints that Mari's scribes were guardians of an older pre-Canadian tradition, one that later scribes deliberately abandoned? Fringe theories have seized upon these anomalies. A few suggest Mari was the centre of a Proto-Semitic language hub predating the linguistic shifts that would shape West Semitic tongues. Others propose Mari's scribes possessed esoteric knowledge, astrological lore or ritual magic encoded in the shape of their cube-form signs. While mainstream academia remains cautious, these ideas underscore how much the tablets continue to provoke. Today, many of the Mari letters rest in museum collections from Paris to Aleppo, catalogued, translated and analysed. Yet thousands remain unpublished, waiting for new scholars to bring fresh perspectives. Political instability in Syria has halted excavations, leaving parts of Telmardic unexamined. The archive room sits silent, their contents echoing with voices we cannot fully hear. So what more could the Mari letters reveal? Could they contain the key to Mari's own demise? A final warning, a hidden clause in a treaty, or a last-minute plea that went unanswered? Or might they preserve memories of Mari's founders, epic tales, poetic laments, perhaps even early versions of myths that later evolved in the epics of Gilgamesh and beyond? At its heart, the Mari archive reminds us that history is never finished. Each tablet, a whisper from a distant world, offers a snapshot of a civilization at its height, grappling with power, fate, and the unknown. And as we sift through their dusty lines, we are left with one profound question. What other secrets lie buried beneath the palace floors of Mari? And when they emerge, will they bring clarity or more questions to the mysteries of the ancient Middle East? As the final words of Mari's dusty archive fade into the silence of forgotten corridors, our path drifts north along the slow-moving Tigris. There, beyond the river's bends and the skeletal outlines of ancient canals, lies a place once forged from stone and empire. Nimrud, ancient Kalhu, heart of the Neo-Astrian world, a city of conquest and ceremony, of kings and colossal gods carved from the earth itself. And yet beneath the ruins and the splendour, another story lingers, one whispered by locals and echoed in unsettling coincidences. The story of the curse of Nimrud. The ruins stretch low and wide across the Mesopotamian plain, surrounded by an emptiness that only history can fill. Once these crumbled walls formed the great capital of Ashur-Nasir-Paulu, who moved his court here in the 9th century BC. He transformed the city into a symbol of divine authority, a place of endless processions, of towering ziggurats, of power set into stone. Its palaces were lined with slabs of carved alabaster, reliefs showing conquests, offerings and kings, flanked by protective spirits known as Lamassu. Human-headed bulls with eagle wings and lion strength. A city built not just to house power, but to project it. And yet Nimrud fell, not with a single cataclysm, but in waves of decline. The city was eventually abandoned. Its glories were buried beneath dust and time until 1845, when British explorer Austin Henry Laird arrived with pickers' notebooks and imperial curiosity. What he uncovered would become one of the greatest archaeological finds of the century. Sculpted panels stretching dozens of feet, vast halls and artefacts of staggering craftsmanship, ovaries, bronze fittings, and inscriptions bearing the boasts of kings who claimed dominion over the known world. But with these discoveries came something less expected. Illness swept through Laird's camp. Porters vanished into the desert. Shipments of artifacts destined for Europe were damaged or mysteriously lost. Laird himself barely survived a fever that struck shortly after his first season at the site. Coincidence, perhaps, or the inevitable hazards of expedition work in a hostile climate. But the pattern didn't end there. In the decades that followed, Nimrud became associated quietly but persistently with misfortune. Curators who handled its artifacts suffered sudden strokes. One archaeologist working with Lamassu reliefs in a museum basement died when an overhead beam collapsed without warning. In the 1950s, an excavation trench at Nimrud caved in, killing 2 workers and narrowly missing the project lead. Was it simply the risk of working among ruins or something else? Local legends speak of a spirit sealed beneath the stones, an entity bound to the city by the Assyrian kings themselves, invoked in ritual texts to protect the realm from evil. Some of these texts survive, inscribed on tiny foundation tablets buried beneath thresholds and corners of royal buildings. Their language is precise, formulaic, and chilling. May the wrath of the gods strike down those who disturb this place. May darkness cover their eyes. Were these merely ceremonial words or genuine warnings? There's more. Some of the most striking reliefs at Nimrud show the king between supernatural guardians, stylized trees of life, winged beings with buckets and pine cones performing gestures whose meaning scholars still debate. Fertility rites, purification rituals, or visual symbols of something now lost, a coded language of divine control. Fringe theorists suggest that these rituals did more than sanctify the buildings, that they imbued them with an energy, real, symbolic, or otherwise, that was not meant to be disturbed. Some point to the Lamassu themselves, whose eyes seem to follow observers, whose massive forms were meant to terrify spirits and intruders alike. Were these guardian figures more than sculpture? Did their presence bind something in place? Then, in 2015, tragedy struck again. As part of their campaign against ancient heritage, ISIS militants bulldozed and detonated parts of Nimrod's ruins. Videos showed the collapse of Lamassu statues, reliefs shattered into dust, the ziggurat flattened into rubble. But afterward, strange reports filtered out. Some of the perpetrators reportedly fell ill. Others died in combat under circumstances that comrades described as unnatural. Iraqi soldiers who later visited the site told of an oppressive heaviness hanging in the air, nothing visible, only a weight on the chest, a sense of being watched. Again, skeptics point to rational causes, exposure to mould, buried toxins, or simply the stress of war. But those who have stood at Nimrod's gates know the feeling. A silence that is not empty, a presence that is not seen. So what then is the nature of the curse? Perhaps it is not a supernatural force, but the echo of disrupted, sacred space, a violation not of magic but of memory. The Assyrians built Nimrud to be eternal. Their inscriptions say as much. When that eternity is broken by time, by war or by human hands, something deeper is disturbed. A contract with the past, unwritten but binding. There are still chambers beneath Nimrod that remain unexcavated, sealed doorways, voids detected by ground-penetrating radar that archaeologists have never opened. Are they empty? Or do they hold the final pieces of the city's story, ritual chambers, unlooted tombs, or more foundation tablets bearing warnings from kings long dead? And if such a chamber were opened, what would we find? Would it be just another artifact, another inscription to catalogue and display? Or would it be something we were never meant to see? Another whisper from the ancient world reminding us that the past, though buried, is not always at rest. The curse of Nimrud may not lie in ghosts or vengeance, but in the weight of a forgotten power, architectural, spiritual, symbolic, still coiled in the stones of its ruined palaces. And so we ask, as the wind brushes the broken Lamassu and the last shadows fall across the palace floor, what did the kings of Nimrud bind into this place? And what still waits beneath the dust, watching from the dust-choked corridors of Nimrud, where ancient curses linger in shattered stone? Our journey shifts southward into the rose-red canyons of Petra, capital of the Nabateans. Here, amid sculpted facades and silent tombs carved from living rock, there lies another marvel, not of relief or sculpture, but of water itself. In this parched landscape, the Nabateans engineered a hidden network of channels, systems and reservoirs so sophisticated that it continues to defy full explanation. This is the purpose of the Nabatean water system. Picture the narrow gorge of the Sick at first light. A shaft of golden sun splits the shadows. If you listen closely, you might hear a whisper, the faint trickle of water channeled through grooves cut into the sandstone floor. In summer, torrents roar through these walls, flash floods that scour the canyon clean. Yet the Nabateans tamed these floods, capturing and diverting every drop into terracotta pipes laid along the crests of desert ridges. How did they do it? Mainstream archaeology tells us the basics. An intricate web of cisterns carved into the living rock connected by concealed conduits. Rain falling onto the rock surfaces was guided by channels into settling pools, where silt settled and clear water flowed onward into underground reservoirs. From there, gravity fed water into Petra's plazas, gardens, and even private homes, supporting a population estimated at 20,000 in its heyday, around the 1st century BC. Yet, for all we understand, the system still surprises. Some systems lie hundreds of meters above the city floor, reachable only via narrow walkways chunked into cliff faces. Others appear in unlikely places deep inside tomb complexes, beneath colonnaded streets or clustered around seemingly unremarkable rock outcrops. What determined their locations? Was it simply topography and rainfall patterns? Or something more deliberate? Perhaps a ritual logic aligning water sources with sacred spaces. Consider the high place of sacrifice perched on Petra's highest ridge. Here, at over 800 mestos above sea level, rock-cut steps wind to a plateau ringed by obelisks. Archaeologists have found traces of channels leading upward from cisterns far below, as though water itself was an offering elevated to the gods. Were these conduits part of secret ceremonies? Did the fine spray of water falling from hidden spouts symbolize purification, linking earth, rock and sky? The Nabateans were renowned traders, moving frankincense and spices across vast deserts. Their wealth owed much to their mastery of water, and perhaps even to the secrecy of their supply. Sextus Julius Ariconis, a 3rd century AD geographer, wrote that Petra was the most luxurious of cities except Rome, citing its springs and fountains. Yet few visitors described seeing the full system. Was it deliberately concealed, a defensive measure against siege? To cut off water would starve an enemy faster than any wall. Or could the waterworks have a darker purpose? Local Bedouin lore speaks of hidden pools deep beneath the ruins, places where the water is said to whisper with the voices of the dead. Travellers sometimes report sudden chills near certain cisterns as if an unseen presence lingers. Are these stories mere superstitions or echoes of Nabatean beliefs about the underworld? Water as a boundary between life and death? Modern restorations have reopened many channels, but portions remain buried or collapsed. Remote sensing surveys hint at further cisterns concealed by rubble, their precise locations unknown. In one canyon, ground-penetrating radar detected a large void, suggesting a lost reservoir, perhaps the largest in Petra, waiting to be rediscovered. What might it reveal? The network's capacity is staggering. Estimates suggest Petra's system could store over 40 million el of water, enough to supply the city for months of drought. Yet, this alone doesn't explain the elaborate design. Why build so many small settling basins instead of 1 or 2 giant tanks? Why carve distribution channels with such precision, often only a few centimeters wide? These choices hint at a deeper understanding perhaps of water chemistry, flow rates, or even acoustics, as flowing water produces a soundscape that may have played a role in Nabatean ritual or urban life. Fringe theories propose that the Nabateans were tapping into underground aquifers, using pressure differentials to bring water to the surface naturally, an engineering feat centuries ahead of its time. Supporters point to unusual circular shafts in certain systems, which could have functioned as primitive bellows or pneumatic amplifiers. While evidence remains sparse, the possibility underscores how much of this system remains unexplained. Today, as the sun dips behind Petra's towering facades, fountains reconstructed from fragments still flow, reminding us of what once was. Gardens bloom in narrow courtyards, pools shimmer in the fading light. Yet for every channel we follow, another disappears into darkness. What other secrets lie within these rock-cut veins? What wisdom did the Nabateans possess? Knowledge of water's hidden paths, its power to sustain life and to inspire awe. And as climate patterns shift once more in this drought-prone land, what lessons remain, buried beneath Petra's silent cliffs, waiting to be found? In the hush that follows the last splash against stone, one question endures. What more does the water of Petra still have to tell us? As the last whispers of Mesopotamian incantations dissolve into the heat of the lowland plains, our journey turns northward, up into the rugged elevations where the winds carve sheer cliffs and the highlands hold their own ancient secrets. Here in the shadow of snow-capped peaks and beside crystalline mountain lakes once stood the mighty kingdom of Urartu. Its stone ramparts guarded fertile valleys and strategic passes from the 9th century BC onward. Yet today those fortresses lie half buried, half forgotten, their terraces whispered over by grass and lichen. This is the story of the forgotten fortresses of Urartu. Imagine approaching a fortress like Arabuni, perched on a rocky spur overlooking the Aras River. At first light, the walls glow rose gold as the desert sun strikes the weathered basalt blocks, each one hand-hunted and laid with precision. You can still make out traces of plaster where scenes of winged gods once soared above temple thresholds. Water channels cut into rock hint at cisterns hidden deep within, each designed to catch the swift mountain runoff and sustain the garrison through harsh winters and sieges alike. Mainstream archaeologists tell us that Eurasian fortresses served as administrative centres, military strongholds, and symbols of royal power. Kings like Argishti III and Soduri II expanded their realm by building lines of fortifications. Tishabini, Kamieh Blur, Van Fortress using advanced masonry techniques, and imposing watchtowers that surveyed the highlands for miles around. Inscriptions in the Urankian language praise the storm god Haldi, ensuring divine favour over stone and soldiers. Yet for all their function, these fortresses retain an aura of mystery. Why build such massive structures in remote windswept places? Why carve reliefs of fierce bulls and sun discs above gates that seldom saw ceremonial processions? Some scholars suggest a strategic purpose, controlling trade routes between Assyria and the Caucasus. Others see a religious impulse. Each fortress acted as a frontier shrine, marking the edge of cosmic order against the chaos of untamed mountains. Inside the walls, excavations have uncovered storage rooms still lined with clay amphare, richly decorated pottery and metal workshops with smelted iron slag. But in many cases, the layout of these complexes remains confusing. At Kamieh Blur, for example, terraces descend sharply, as though the builders intended to funnel enemies along a predetermined path, only to abandon certain sectors abruptly. Could these unused courtyards reflect a hasty withdrawal in the face of an unknown threat? Or were they deliberately left unfinished, part of a ritual pattern intended to confuse attackers or appease the gods? Evidence of fire damage appears in both Arabuni and Tessabayini, dated to roughly the same period around the mid-7th century BC. Historical records hint at an alliance of nomadic tribes, possibly the Sayans or Samrians, sweeping through the region. But no contemporary Urian accounts describe the siege. Did the empire collapse so suddenly that scribes had no time to record the fall? Or were official histories deliberately erased by victorious powers, leaving holes in our understanding? Even more puzzling are the subterranean passages found beneath some fortresses. At Van Fortress, a hidden stairway descends into a gated chamber, 30 mes below the plateau. The walls bear no inscriptions, and the floor is slick with ancient moisture. Local lore speaks of a hall of whispers, where prisoners were said to vanish. Archaeologists remain divided. Was this an escape tunnel, a sacred cavern, or something darker? An oblette to seal away traitors never to emerge? Then there are the oracle chambers, small side rooms with niches carved into the walls, positioned in relation to faint lines of sunlight at dawn. In one chamber at Arabuni, a beam of light falls precisely on a carved basin at the summer solstice, suggesting astronomical knowledge. Did the Urarians use these rooms to read omens or summon guidance before embarking on campaigns? Or might they have been intended for secretive rites accessible only to a priestly elite who spoke in hushed tones and wore masks of bronze? Fringe theories contend that Urarian fortresses were more than military bulwarks, that they formed a network of energy nodes tapping into ley lines crisscrossing the highlands. Proponents point to alignments between certain fortresses and sacred mountains, claiming these were chosen for their geomantic properties. While mainstream scholarship finds little direct evidence for such ideas, the precision of Urartian engineering continues to astonish. How did artisans carve multi-tonen stones on precipitous ridges without modern machinery? How did they channel water through miles of carved rock in an era before metallurgy advanced beyond bronze? The final chapters of Urartu's story remain shrouded in silence. By the late 6th century BC, the empire had fragmented under external pressure from Mes and Persians. Fortresses were abandoned, pillaged, then slowly reclaimed by nature. Inscriptions were plastered over, reliefs knocked off their pedestals. Over centuries, mountain goats and shepherds claimed these sites as little more than curious ruins, stone relics of a civilization many had only heard of in hushed legends. Today, a handful of fortresses have been partially restored, their walls reinforced for tourists seeking panoramic views of the highlands. Yet many lie off the beaten path, hidden behind landslides, obscured by pine forests or submerged beneath reservoirs. These excavated sites may hold further clues, tablets detailing daily life, hidden sanctuaries with preserved iconography, or perhaps that oracle chamber at Tessabaini, whose door was sealed so thoroughly that no modern survey has yet pinpointed its entrance. What then is the true purpose behind these stone giants of Urartu? Were they merely the skeleton of an administrative network, or did they embody a synthesis of military might, religious devotion, and cosmic order? What messages do the fortresses still hold, not only about how the Urartians defended their realm, but about how they understood their place in the world? As we stand on the ramparts of Arabuni, the wind carrying the faint rustle of grass and the distant roar of the Aras, one question lingers above the highland air. What secrets do the forgotten fortresses of Urartu still guard beneath their crumbling walls and silent gates, waiting for us to uncover?